A single mother accidentally messaged her boss saying, "I miss you." When he showed up and whispered those words, their lives changed forever. A story that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you are watching from. The light rain of March drummed against the kitchen window, creating a melancholic rhythm that perfectly matched the exhaustion weighing on Sarah Johnson's shoulders. At 36, she moved through her small apartment in Brooklyn with the automatic precision of someone who had been repeating that routine for a long time. The smell of sautéed garlic and fresh oregano filled the cramped space as she stirred the marinara sauce in the pot, watching the bubbles burst on the red surface. Sarah was the kind of woman who drew attention without trying. Wavy brown hair fell to her shoulders, always tied up in a practical bun during the day, but now, at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, it was loose and slightly messy. Her honey-colored eyes carried a constant expression of alertness, as if she were perpetually calculating the next step, anticipating the next problem. She was slim, almost angular, a reflection of rushed meals and sleepless nights. She wore faded jeans and a grey t-shirt with a small coffee stain she hadn't even noticed when leaving work. The apartment reflected her personality, organized to the point of obsession. Magnetic lists covered the refrigerator. Monthly grocery lists, Ethan's activity schedules, work deadlines, bills to pay. On the small dining table for four that occupied a good part of the combined living room, perfectly aligned stacks of papers vied for space with the silver laptop that never fully shut down. The white walls were decorated with framed drawings from her son, carefully arranged, and a light wood bookshelf held books organized by color and size. "Mom, are you ready yet?" Ethan's voice echoed from the bedroom, followed by the characteristic sound of Lego pieces being rummaged through. "Just 5 more minutes, sweetheart," Sarah replied, feeling the familiar knot in her throat. Ethan was 8 years old, and the reason she woke up every day. With dark hair like hers, curious eyes always full of questions, and a toothy grin that melted her heart. But he was also the reason she couldn't sleep at night, worried if she was doing everything right, if she was being a good enough mother, if he missed having a complete family. 3 years. It had been 3 years since David had left their lives, leaving only overdue child support and sporadic visits that hurt more than they helped. The divorce had been a war, mutual accusations, expensive lawyers, nights crying in the bathroom so Ethan wouldn't hear. Sarah still remembered the last argument when David shouted that she was obsessed with control, unable to just live. Maybe he was right. Maybe that was exactly why everything had fallen apart. She turned off the heat and leaned her hands on the sink, looking out the window at the lights of the neighboring buildings. Somewhere out there, families were having dinner together, couples were talking about their day, people were sharing their lives. And her, she had spreadsheets, lists, control over every minute of every day, but no control over the loneliness that engulfed her when Ethan finally fell asleep and the apartment became too quiet. Her phone vibrated on the counter. It was Carla, her best friend since college. "How was your week? Still alive?" The message came with a laughing emoji. Sarah picked up the phone, feeling the weight of the week crash down on her all at once. 7 days, organizing every detail of a new cosmetics line launch for Glamour & Co., the agency's biggest client. 7 days listening to complaints, resolving crises, mediating conflicts between the creative department and the client. 7 days smiling professionally, while inside she felt like she was falling apart. Her fingers began to type, and the words flowed more honestly than she intended. "Carla, I'm exhausted, not just from work. I'm tired of doing everything alone, tired of lying in bed every night and realizing that no one is going to ask how my day was. I miss you. I miss real conversations, someone who sees me beyond the perfect mother, the competent professional. I need someone who truly sees me, you know? who sees the mess I am inside and doesn't run away. She hit send without reviewing, returning to the pot of pasta that was starting to boil. Ethan appeared in the kitchen, dragging his favorite stuffed dinosaur. "Mum, am I going to Dad's house tomorrow?" Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "Yes, sweetheart. Your dad will pick you up after lunch." "Are you going to be alone again?" His eyes carried a concern that no 8-year-old should have. She knelt down, fixing her son's unruly hair. "I'll be fine, my love. Mommy has a lot of things to do. I won't even notice that you left." A lie. She always noticed. The weekends without Ethan were a void she tried to fill with work, cleaning, and shows she couldn't pay attention to. But he didn't need to know that. They served the plates and sat at the table. Ethan chatted about a science project at school, something about volcanoes and how they worked. Sarah listened with half her attention, asking the right questions at the right moments, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about Michael Thompson, her boss, the CEO of Creative & Co., the advertising agency where she had worked for 5 years as an events coordinator. A 42-year-old man with black hair streaked with grey at the temples, dark and piercing eyes, always impeccably dressed in suits that probably cost more than her rent. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that dominated any room he entered. Michael was known for 2 things: the creative genius that transformed in a small agency in one of the most respected areas of New York. There was an emotional wall that he maintained between himself and all the employees. In the 5 years of working there, Sarah had never seen him have lunch with the team, never heard him make a joke, never noticed any trace of vulnerability. It was known that he had been divorced for 2 years. Rumors said that his ex-wife had cheated on him with his former business partner, resulting not only in the end of the marriage, but in the complete dissolution of the first company that Michael had founded. Since then, he had been a fortress, professional, distant, untouchable, and Sarah. Sarah had spent the last 6 months noticing things she shouldn't. The way he held his pen during meetings, the faint scent of lavender that his cologne left in the air, the tense line of his jaw when he was focused. She had noticed the small scar above his left eyebrow and found herself imagining the story behind it. It was ridiculous. She was 36, had a son, and a life too complicated for teenage fantasies about her boss. The phone vibrated again, pulling her from her thoughts, probably Carla responding. But when she looked at the screen, her blood ran cold. The message had not been sent to Carla. It was there in the conversation with Michael Thompson Work, that desperate and vulnerable confession about loneliness, about needing someone to truly see her. "No, no, no, no," Sarah whispered, feeling the room spin. "Mum, are you okay?" Ethan watched her with concern. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Mummy just forgot something." Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen, at that message that couldn't be undone, that couldn't be explained. How had she done this? Michael was right above Carla in the chat. List. She had sent it without looking, blinded by fatigue, by emotional exhaustion, and now he was reading it. The 2 blue checks glowed on the screen like a condemnation. Seen at 8:47 p.m. Sarah dropped her fork, unable to eat. Her brain went into crisis mode, crafting and discarding excuses. Could she say it was meant for someone else? That her phone had been hacked? That it was song lyrics? All sounded pathetic, even in her own head. 20 minutes dragged on like hours. Ethan finished dinner and went back to his room, oblivious to his mother's personal catastrophe. Sarah remained seated, staring at her phone, waiting for what? A response? A lecture on professionalism? A termination notice? But nothing happened, until the doorbell rang. Sarah looked at the intercom, her heart racing. Who could it be at 9 o'clock on a Friday night? Carla had a key. David never showed up unannounced. She pressed the button. "Hello?" "Sarah, It's me, Michael. His deep, controlled voice, but with something different, an urgency she had never heard before. I need to talk to you. Now. The world seemed to stop. He was here, at the door of the building. The boss she had just sent a completely inappropriate message to was literally at her door. I'll come down, she managed to say, her voice faltering. No, I need to come up, please. Sarah pressed the button to unlock the door, feeling like she was about to faint. She ran to the entrance mirror, saw her pale reflection, messy hair, stained shirt. There was no time for anything. The knocks on the door came too quickly. When she opened it, Michael Thompson was there, and Sarah almost didn't recognize him. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore dark jeans and a navy blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the elbows. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had run his hands through it several times, and he was carrying a bottle of wine. But it was the expression on his face that took her breath away. There was no anger, there was no professional embarrassment, there was something raw, exposed, frighteningly vulnerable. Sarah began, not knowing how to finish. Michael stepped forward, invading her space, so close that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, the woody scent of his cologne mixed with something that was just him. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, hoarse, laden with something that made every nerve ending in her body awaken. "I received your message. It was a mistake. I was sending it to my friend and—" "I miss you too," he interrupted her, and the words fell like a bomb in the small space between them. "And I didn't even know it until now. Until I read those words and realized that's exactly how I felt every time you walked into my office. Every time I heard your voice in the hallway. I miss you even when you're there because I keep this stupid distance that I thought would protect me." Sarah couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She just looked at this man who had always been a distant, unreachable figure and saw something completely different. "Since when?" she whispered. "I don't know. Months. The day you argued with that client who disrespected you and then cried in the parking lot thinking no one was watching. The day you brought brownies to the office because it was someone's birthday from the cleaning staff that everyone forgot. I don't know when it started. I just know it's consuming me." Tears burned in her eyes. "Michael, I have a son, a complicated life. I can't just be another mess in your life." He finally invaded her space completely, his hand rising to touch her face with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity in his eyes. "Then don't be a mess. Be the clarity I didn't know I was looking for." And when their lips met, Sarah felt the control she had held so rigidly over her life shatter completely. The kiss ended as abruptly as it began. Sarah pulled away, her hands trembling as she brought her fingers to her lips as if she needed to confirm that it had really happened. Michael stood still, breathing unevenly, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel exposed and seen at the same time. "Mom?" Ethan's voice cut through the moment like a knife, a sharp blade. Sarah quickly turned instinctively, placing herself between her son and Michael. Ethan was standing in the narrow hallway leading to the bedrooms, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, his wide, confused eyes alternating between his mother and the stranger in the room. "Honey, go back to your room. I'll be there in a minute," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady, but feeling panic rising in her throat. "Who is he?" Ethan didn't move, and there was something in his posture, tense shoulders, chin raised, that painfully reminded her of David when he was on the defensive. Michael took a step back, suddenly seeming aware of the situation. "Hi, Ethan. I'm Michael. I work with your mom. I came to bring some documents she forgot at the office." The lie came out smooth, natural, but Sarah saw the way he swallowed, uncomfortable. "You didn't bring any folder," Ethan pointed out with the relentless logic of children, "and my mom never forgets anything." Sarah felt her heart tighten. "Ethan, please, room, now." Something in her tone made the boy obey, but not before casting one last suspicious glance at Michael. The sound of the bedroom door closing echoed like a sentence in the tense silence that followed. "I'm sorry," Michael said quietly, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't think. I shouldn't have come here like this, without warning, without—" "No!" Sarah interrupted him, hugging herself. "I sent that message. I opened this door." She finally looked. At him, really looked, and saw a man as lost as she was. "But you need to go, now. Sarah, please." Her voice broke on the last syllable. I need to think. I need to deal with my son who just saw his mother kissing a stranger. I need to process all of this because 3 hours ago I was making pasta and now my whole life is upside down." Michael nodded slowly, but didn't move immediately. "Can we talk? Tomorrow? Monday? Whenever you want?" "I don't know." Sarah hugged herself tighter, feeling small in her own apartment. "I don't know anything right now." He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the doorknob. "The message you sent, it wasn't a mistake. Not really. You meant every word, even if it wasn't meant for me." He turned to face her. "And I meant every word I said here. So when you're ready, I'll be waiting." After he left, Sarah stood in the middle of the room, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway, the sound of the elevator descending. Only when the silence returned completely did she allow the tears to fall. They were confused. Tears, not of sadness or joy, but of pure terror in the face of the unknown. For 3 years since the divorce, Sarah had built a predictable life, controlled, safe, work, child, routine, no surprises, no risks, no possibility of breaking again. And in a single night, with a mistakenly sent message and an unplanned kiss, all of that was threatened. She took a deep breath, dried her tears, and walked to Ethan's room. He was sitting on the bed, still holding the dinosaur, pretending to read a comic book, but she could see the tension in his small shoulders. "Can we talk?" Sarah sat on the edge of the bed. "Are you dating him?" The question came straight, without preamble. "No, I'm not dating anyone." "But you kissed him. I saw." Sarah closed her eyes. How to explain to an 8-year-old something she didn't understand herself? Sometimes adults do confusing things, things they didn't even plan. "Are you going to marry him?" Ethan's voice was small now, scared. "Is he going to live here? Is he going to be my new dad?" "Ethan, look at me." Sarah held her son's face in her hands. "No one is going to replace your dad, ever, and no one is going to live here without us talking a lot about it first, okay? Promise?" "I promise." But as she hugged her son, feeling his small body relax against hers, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. Michael Thompson would not meet Ethan, not until she was absolutely sure he wouldn't disappear from their lives like David had. Not until the risk was worth the potential harm. The weekend dragged on in a fog of anxiety. Saturday morning, David showed up to pick up Ethan, 20 minutes late as always, honking from the car instead of coming up. Sarah watched from the window as her son got into the black Civic, saw David barely glance at the boy before speeding off, his phone already glued to his ear. With the apartment empty, she tried to work. She opened her laptop, reviewed spreadsheets for the launch event that was scheduled for the following Friday, answered emails. But her eyes kept drifting back to her phone. Waiting for what? A message from him? An apology? A confirmation that all of this had been real? The phone remained silent. Sunday afternoon, when Ethan returned chattering about the amusement park where David had taken him, certainly trying to make up for another late child support payment, Sarah was exhausted from thinking. She had formulated and discarded 1,000 scenarios. Michael regretting. Michael waiting. Michael deciding she was too complicated. Monday arrived draped in the typical March drizzle of New York City. Sarah woke up at 6, made Ethan's breakfast, packed his lunch with her usual obsessive care, crustless sandwich, fresh juice, fruit cut into perfect pieces. She dropped her son off at school at 7:15, just like every day. She arrived at the office at 8 on the dot. Creative & Co. occupied 2 floors of a commercial building in Brooklyn with exposed brick walls, reclaimed wood furniture, and that trendy atmosphere that all advertising agencies in New York tried to replicate. The colorful logo shone in the reception area, where Julia, the 20-something receptionist with pink hair, greeted her with her usual enthusiasm. "Good morning, Sarah. What a weekend it was." "Hey, you look like you haven't slept." "Just a normal weekend," Sarah lied, forcing a smile. "Where's the coffee?" "The machine broke again. We have to use that awful instant stuff from the break room." "Great. A Monday without decent coffee." Sarah walked down the open hallway where the creative team's desks were spread out in organized chaos. Macs with huge screens, drawing tablets, colorful post-its covering every available surface. Jason, the art director, waved at her without taking his eyes off the screen. Jessica, the copywriter, was sleeping with her head resting on the desk, probably having pulled an all-nighter. The events department was at the end of the hallway, a glass room that Sarah insisted on having, so she could see everything happening around her. Her territory. 3. Desks, 2 assistants who arrived at 9, walls covered with mood boards of ongoing projects. She hung her bag, turned on her computer, and tried to focus on the final adjustments for the launch of Glamour & Co. on Friday. 200 guests, a cocktail party on the terrace of the Standard Hotel, live product demonstrations, confirmed influencers. Everything meticulously planned, every detail in her colorful spreadsheet. But her mind was upstairs, where Michael's office was. 9 o'clock, 9:15, 9:30. The email arrived at 9:43. Meeting, 10 a.m. My office, MT. Short. Professional. Nothing. Indicating the events of Friday night. Sarah stared at the screen, her heart racing. Was it just a work meeting? Or was it something else? 5 minutes to 10, she climbed the stairs to the second floor, each step feeling higher than the last. Michael's office was in the corner, glass walls with blinds that he kept closed most of the time. Emily, the executive assistant, was at the desk in front of the door. Emily was 32, impeccably blonde, always dressed as if she were going to a fashion editorial. She had worked at Creative & Co. for 8 years, since the agency was tiny and was known for 3 things: relentless efficiency, dog-like loyalty to Michael, and an ambition she didn't hide from anyone. "He's waiting for you," Emily said without looking up from her computer, but Sarah noticed the tense line of her jaw, the way her fingers typed with unnecessary force. Sarah knocked on the door, heard the muffled "come in," and turned the doorknob. Michael was behind the solid mahogany desk, impeccably dressed in a charcoal grey suit, navy tie, hair perfectly styled, the fortress rebuilt, as if Friday had never happened. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair in front of him. Sarah sat down, her hands clammy, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "The launch of Glamour & Co. is on Friday," Michael began, his eyes on the papers in front of him, not on her. "I want to review the final details." Work. It was just work. Sarah didn't know if she felt relieved or disappointed. "Of course, everything is on schedule. Guest list finalized, vendors confirmed, team briefed." Sarah. He finally looked at her, and she saw everything he was trying to hide. The tension in his jaw, the fatigue around his eyes, his hands firmly clasped on the table as if he were holding himself together. "About Friday night." "It was a mistake," she interrupted, her voice coming out firmer than she expected. Mine. I sent that message by accident, and you misinterpreted it, and things got out of control. But we are professionals. We can forget it happened. Do you want to forget? Each word came out heavy, loaded. Sarah forced herself to hold his gaze. I have a son, a complicated life, and you are my boss. There are 1,000 reasons why this would be a terrible idea. There are. He leaned forward, and I spent the entire weekend listing them all. The difference in position, the professional complication, the fact that I was married and failed miserably at it, the fact that you have a son and I have no idea how to deal with kids. Pause. And in the end, none of those reasons mattered. Michael, I'm not going to pressure you. I'm not going to make this uncomfortable at work, but I'm also not going to pretend I don't feel anything, that I haven't spent the last few months watching you and wishing I had the courage to cross that damn professional distance I created myself. He leaned back in his chair. So the decision is yours. If you want this to be just work, it will be just work. But if you want more, I can't. Her voice broke. I can't risk my job. I can't risk Ethan's stability. I can't risk falling apart again. Michael nodded slowly. I understand. The silence that followed was thick, laden with everything that wasn't being said. So, Sarah began, back to normal. To normal. He picked up the folder on the table. Show me the final event schedule. And so, for 40 minutes, they discussed timings, menus, vendor lists, professionals, distant, as if Friday had never happened, as if the world hadn't changed completely. But when Sarah stood up to leave, her hand on the doorknob, Michael said softly, Sarah. She stopped, but didn't turn around. I'll be waiting, for as long as you need, or forever, if it comes to that. Sarah left without answering, feeling the tears burning. She passed Emily, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. She descended the stairs with shaky legs. Back in her office, she closed the blinds for the first time in 5 years and allowed herself to cry. Because for the first time since the divorce, someone saw her, really saw her, and that was more terrifying than any loneliness. The following weeks dragged on in an uncomfortable dance of forced professionalism and unresolved tension. Sarah threw herself into work with an intensity bordering on obsession, arriving earlier, leaving later, reviewing every detail of every project 3 times. It was easier to get lost in spreadsheets and schedules than... Michael was facing the looks he cast when he thought she wasn't watching. The launch of Glamour & Kurt on Friday was a resounding success. The terrace of the Standard Hotel was immaculate. Soft lights, minimalist decor in shades of pink and gold, waiters circulating with glasses of champagne and sophisticated canapes. Influencers posed for photos next to the products, journalists took notes, and the brand's marketing director couldn't stop praising Sarah for the flawless execution. But Sarah barely registered the compliments. She was hyper-aware of Michael's presence across the room, talking to clients, his impeccable black suit accentuating his broad shoulders. The professional smile she now knew was just a facade. Every time their eyes accidentally met across the crowd, she felt an electric jolt run down her spine. "You look amazing tonight." Jason, the art director, appeared at her side with 2 glasses of champagne, offering one to her. "Seriously, this event is flawless. You're like the best at what you do." Sarah accepted the glass, grateful for the distraction. Jason was handsome in a laid-back way, curly hair always tousled, stubble, patterned shirts that no one else could pull off without looking ridiculous. He was funny, talented, and clearly interested in her for months. "Thanks, Jay. You also nailed the visual identity. Could we celebrate later? There's a new bar in Brooklyn that's incredible. Great music, even better drinks." It was a clear opening, easy, safe. Jason was single, fun, and at the same hierarchical level as her. There were no complications, no risks. I can't. I have to pick up Ethan from my mum's. Another day then. He smiled, hopeful. Sarah was about to respond when she felt a presence behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Her body was already reacting, every nerve on high, alert. "Sarah, I need to talk to you. About the contract with Glamour & Co." Michael's voice was professional, but there was an underlying tension. "Jason, do you mind?" "Of course, boss." Jason stepped away, but not before casting a confused glance at Sarah. Michael guided her to a more secluded corner of the terrace, where the noise of the party was muffled, and the view of New York stretched bright and infinite into the night. "There's no contract to discuss, is there?" Sarah said quietly, looking at the city instead of facing him. "No." He stood beside her, also, gazing at the horizon. "But watching you flirt with Jason was killing me, and I'm not man enough to pretend I wasn't." "I wasn't flirting, and even if I was, it wouldn't be your business." "I know." His jaw was tense. "Believe me, I know. I've spent the last 3 weeks telling myself that you made the right choice, that professionalism is the right thing, that I should respect your boundaries." He finally looked at her. "But tell me something, Sarah. Are you happy with that decision?" She didn't answer because she couldn't lie. "Me neither," Michael continued. "I watch. You in the office, trying not to look too much, not to talk too much, not to give anyone reasons to gossip, and it's the worst torture I've ever imposed on myself." "And what do you want me to do?" Sarah finally turned to him, frustration spilling over. "Risk my job? Become office gossip? Confuse my son by introducing men who might disappear from his life?" "No, I don't want any of that." Michael ran a hand through his hair, messing up his perfect hairstyle. "I want to get to know you for real, away from the office. No pressure, no expectations. Just see if what we feel is real or just a fantasy we created." "Michael, a coffee, Saturday morning. There's a bakery in Market Square that makes the best fried dough in New York. Just you and me, talking like normal people, not boss and employee." He stepped a little closer, but still kept a respectful distance. "If after that you still want just professionalism, I promise I will respect that, but give me a chance to show you who I am when I'm not hiding behind this corporate armor." Sarah looked at that man. Always so, controlled, so distant, now vulnerable and exposed before her, and she realized she wanted to know him too. She wanted to know about the scar on his eyebrow, about the childhood he had briefly mentioned Friday night, about who Michael Thompson was when the walls finally came down. "Just coffee," she finally said, "and away from the office. If anyone sees us together." "No one will see, I promise." But someone did see. Emily was across the terrace, a glass of wine in hand, her eyes fixed on the two of them, and even from a distance Sarah could see the expression on her face, a mix of surprise, hurt, and something darker that she couldn't identify. Saturday dawned with a clear and sunny sky, rare for New York in April. Sarah woke up early, her stomach twisted in knots of nervousness. Ethan was with David for the weekend. His father finally kept the visitation agreement without delay, so she had the day free. She spent 20 minutes choosing an outfit, not too dressed up, not too casual. She ended up opting for light jeans, a simple white top and sneakers. She left her hair down, with light makeup, casual, as if she hadn't thought much about it, even though she had thought for an hour. Market Square was bustling even at 9 in the morning. The antique fair was already set up, stalls selling everything, vinyl records, used books, vintage furniture, crafts, the smell of fried dough mixed with the aroma of coffee from the surrounding bakeries. Michael was waiting near the bandstand, and Sarah almost laughed when she saw him. He was wearing jeans, and a simple grey t-shirt that highlighted his broad shoulders. No gel in his hair, just the black strands falling naturally, Aviator sunglasses. He looked 10 years younger and completely different from the intimidating CEO in the office. "Hi," he said as she approached, and there was nervousness in his voice. Michael Thompson, the man who confidently presented to millionaire clients, was nervous. "Hi," she replied, feeling her own nerves intensifying. They walked side by side to the bakery he had mentioned, a small and cozy place called Our Bread, with worn wooden tables and a glass counter displaying artisanal breads. They ordered coffee with milk and toasted bread with butter and sat at a table in the corner. For a moment, they just looked at each other, unsure of where to start. "I have no idea how to do this," Michael finally admitted, stirring his coffee. "Dating, meeting someone. It's been so long that I forgot how it works." 2 years since the divorce? Sarah asked gently. 2.5. But to be honest, the marriage was already dead long before that. He took off his glasses, and Sarah saw the weariness in his eyes. "Amanda and I got married for all the wrong reasons. Convenience, social pressure because it was the next logical step after 3 years of dating. But there was never a real connection. And when she cheated with Marcus, my business partner, it was almost a relief. Finally an excuse to admit it had been a mistake from the start." "But it hurt," Sarah said, not as a question, but as a statement. "It hurt because I was an idiot, because I trusted Marcus like a brother, and he destroyed not only my marriage, but my company. I had to start from scratch, rebuild everything." He held the cup tighter, "And I swore I would never let anyone close enough to hurt me like that again. And here I am with a dramatic message about loneliness." Sarah tried to lighten the mood. Michael smiled, and it was the first time she saw a genuine smile from him. Not the professional one, not the polite one, but real. That message caught me completely off guard, because it was exactly how I felt, but didn't admit even to myself. "I did that too," Sarah confessed. "The vow to never let anyone close again. David, the divorce was brutal. He blamed me for everything, said I was too controlling, too cold, that I suffocated him with my expectations. And maybe he was right. Or maybe he was a coward who couldn't handle a strong woman." Sarah blinked, surprised by the vehemence in his voice. "Sorry, I shouldn't speak like that about your child's father. But any man who abandons his family doesn't deserve to have you blaming yourself." He didn't completely abandon. He still sees Ethan. Sometimes. Sometimes isn't enough. A child needs consistency. There was something painful in the way he said that, and Sarah leaned forward. "Did you want kids?" Michael was silent for a long moment. "I did. Amanda didn't. She said it would interfere with her career, her freedom, and I accepted because I thought loving her meant accepting all her choices." He looked out the window at the busy square. "But sometimes I wonder how it would have been. Teaching someone to ride a bike, helping with homework, all those silly things that seem important." "They're not silly," Sarah said softly. "They're everything." They talked for 2 hours. Michael shared about his childhood in Springfield, Illinois, the son of a history teacher and a librarian. He grew up surrounded by books, dreaming of following in his father's footsteps and teaching, but circumstances pushed him into management, and somehow he ended up building an empire in advertising. "But you know what's funny?" he said, the toasted bread already cold in front of him. "I'm good at this, really good, but I've never truly loved. It's just what I do." Sarah understood perfectly. "I wanted to be a chef. Go to culinary school, open a small restaurant, create dishes that made people happy." She laughed without humor. "I ended up coordinating corporate events. It's not bad, but it's not mine. Why didn't you? Unplanned pregnancy at 25, rushed marriage. Bills to pay. Life happened." She shrugged. "And now I have a child to raise. Dreams take a back seat." "They shouldn't," Michael said intensely. "Ethan deserves a mother who is happy, not a martyr." The words hit Sarah hard, touching wounds she didn't even know were still bleeding. After coffee, they walked through the market. Michael stopped at a vinyl record stall, flipping through with a nostalgic smile. "My dad had a huge collection. Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Fleetwood Mac. Sunday mornings he would play them while my mom made lunch." He picked up an LP of The Corner. "Club." "It's one of the few completely happy memories I have." Sarah watched the delicacy with which he held the record, and something inside her warmed. "Buy it," she said impulsively, "and invite me to listen one day." Michael looked at her, surprised, and then that genuine smile returned. "Is that an official invitation?" "Maybe." They continued walking, and for the first time in 3 years, Sarah allowed herself to relax. There were no spreadsheets here, no to-do lists, no control, just the moment, the easy conversation, the feeling of being seen by someone who was truly paying attention. But the bubble burst when Michael's phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. "Emily, from the office," he answered. "Yes?" Sarah saw his expression change. First confusion, then concern, then something close to panic. "When did this happen?" "And she is sure?" "Damn. Okay, I'll deal with it on Monday. No, don't say anything to anyone yet." He hung up, jaw tense. "What was that?" Sarah asked, anxiety returning instantly. "Marcus Viana, from Viana Supermarkets. 40% of our revenue." Michael put his phone away. His secretary called to schedule an urgent meeting for Monday. "She said it's to discuss the terms of the partnership. Is that bad?" "I don't know, but the timing is suspicious. Emily mentioned there are rumors that he's dissatisfied with something." He ran his hand through his hair, Michael, the CEO, returning. "Sorry, I didn't mean to bring work into today." "It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Sarah felt the moment slipping away, reality invading the bubble they had created. "I should go," he said, but didn't move. "Plan strategy, review the contract, prepare arguments." "You should," Sarah agreed. They stood there looking at each other, neither wanting to end the day. "Sarah," Michael finally said, today, it was more than I expected. You're more than I expected." "You too. Can I see you again? Not in the office, not as boss and employee, just like we were today?" Sarah knew she should say no, that each meeting made it harder to keep distance, that she was entering dangerous territory. "Yes," she said anyway, "you can." But when she got home that afternoon, she found 3 missed calls from Lisa and a message. "Call me urgent." When she called back, her friend's voice was tense. "Sarah, I don't know how to tell you this, but I need to. Rumors are circulating about you and Michael." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What kind of rumors?" "That you two are having an affair. That's why you weren't fired when the events department had to cut costs last year. That you're using him to climb the corporate ladder." "That's ridiculous. I'm not—" Sarah stopped. Technically, now they were having... what? An affair? Dates? "I know it's a lie," Lisa continued, "but you need to be careful. This kind of gossip can destroy a career, especially yours, not his." After hanging up, Sarah sat on the couch in her silent apartment and allowed reality to hit her fully. She had been fooling herself, thinking they could keep this a secret. In a company with 50 employees, where everyone knew each other, where Emily saw everything happening around Michael, secrets didn't exist. And now she had to decide, was it worth risking everything, career, reputation, stability, for something that had barely begun? The phone buzzed. Message from Michael. "Thank you for today. Best Saturday I've had in years. When can I see you again?" Sarah looked at the words on the screen, her heart tight, and didn't know how to respond. Monday arrived with a cloudy sky and the threat of a storm, a perfect reflection of the atmosphere in the Office of Creative and Commerce. Sarah felt the change the moment she walked through the door. Conversations stopping when she passed, furtive glances, poorly disguised whispers. Julia at the reception greeted her with less enthusiasm than usual. Jason turned his face when she waved in the hallway. Even Jessica, the copywriter she had lunch with at least once a week, made up a flimsy excuse about a deadline when Sarah suggested they go to the Japanese restaurant around the corner. "Is everyone acting strange, or is it just me?" Sarah asked Lucas, her assistant, a 26-year-old recent marketing graduate who loved coffee and hated drama. Lucas avoided her gaze, organizing papers that were already perfectly organized. "I don't know what you're talking about." Lucas. "Sarah, I really can't. What are they saying about me?" He sighed, finally looking at her with something resembling pity. "That you and Michael are, and that's why you always get the best projects, that you're getting special treatment." Sarah felt her blood boil. "I get the best projects because I'm good at what I do, because I work twice as hard, stay late, never miss deadlines." "I know that. Everyone who works with you knows that. But—" He hesitated. "Emily has been saying things. About you two on the terrace on Friday talking too closely. About how Michael never acts like that with anyone." "Of course, Emily," Sarah should have guessed. At 10 o'clock she was called into an urgent meeting, not with Michael, but with Mark Wilson, the owner of the grocery store chain that was the agency's biggest client. The meeting room was freezing, air conditioning at maximum, and smelled of old coffee and ambition. Mark Wilson was in his 50s, with slicked-back grey hair, an Italian suit that cost more than Sarah's car, and a smile that never reached his eyes. He was sitting at the head of the table when she entered, with Michael on one side and Emily on the other, typing furiously on her laptop. "Ah, Sarah!" Mark stood up, extending his hand. "The star of events. Finally, we're going to work more closely." There was something in the way he said closely that made her skin crawl. "Mr. Wilson." She shook his hand briefly, feeling his fingers linger a second longer than necessary. "It's a pleasure. The pleasure is all mine, I assure you." He didn't let go of her hand immediately, his thumb brushing lightly against her back before releasing it. Sarah sat next to Michael, who was tense, his jaw clenched. Emily continued typing, but Sarah could feel her eyes watching every move. "So," Mark began, leaning back in his chair as if he owned the place. "I'm very pleased with the work of Creative & Co. Very much. In fact, I'm thinking of expanding our partnership." Michael leaned forward. "We're glad to hear that, Mark. What kind of expansion are you considering?" "We want to do monthly events at each of the 50 stores. Tastings, product launches, customer experiences." He looked directly at Sarah. "And I would like Sarah to personally coordinate. She has a special touch." The way he said "special touch" made Sarah's stomach churn. "It would be a 2-year contract," Mark continued, pulling a document from his folder. "It would triple the current amount we invest in the agency. But I have one condition." "What?" Michael asked, his voice controlled. But Sarah sensed the tension. "I want weekly meetings, alone with Sarah, to discuss every detail of the events, to ensure my vision is executed perfectly." Mark smiled, and there was nothing in the professional tone of that smile. "After all, a project of this size requires special attention, don't you think, Sarah?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah could feel Michael next to her, practically vibrating with contained anger. Emily had stopped typing, watching the scene with wide eyes. "With all due respect, Mr. Wilson," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady, even with her heart racing. "Weekly individual meetings are unnecessary. We can hold bi-weekly presentations with the entire team involved, ensuring transparency and efficiency." "But I prefer the format I suggested." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. It's my money, my rules, unless you're not interested in making this deal work. It was a trap. Sarah could see it clearly. Accepting meant putting herself in uncomfortable situations alone with a man who clearly had inappropriate intentions. Refusing meant losing a contract that represented 40% of the agency's revenue. "Marcus," Michael intervened, his voice low but with an edge. "All our meetings with clients follow established protocols. There are always at least 2 team members present. It's company policy, non-negotiable. Policies can be flexible when the opportunity is good enough." Marcus didn't take his eyes off Sarah. "What do you think, Sarah? Is it worth being flexible?" Sarah's hand clenched into a fist under the table. "I believe protocols exist for good reasons, and I agree with Michael. Any meeting should include the necessary team members." Something dangerous flickered in Marcus's eyes. "I understand. What a shame." He slammed the folder shut. "I'll reconsider the expansion then. Perhaps other agencies will be more collaborative." "If collaboration means putting my employee in inappropriate situations, then we are definitely not the right agency for you." Michael stood up. "We can maintain the current contract on the same terms, or we can end it here. Your choice." Sarah's eyes widened. He was betting everything, 40% of the agency's revenue, to protect her. Marcus also stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You're going to regret this, Wilson. I'll spread the word that your agency is impossible to work with, that you sabotage opportunities over personal grudges. Feel free, our reputation speaks for itself." Marcus looked at Sarah one last time, his eyes cold. What a waste! Then he grabbed his folder and stormed out, slamming the door. The silence in the room was suffocating. Emily remained frozen, looking between Michael and Sarah as if she were witnessing a car crash in slow motion. "Michael, you just—" Sarah began, but he interrupted her. "No. I'm not going to hear that I shouldn't have done this. I'm not going to accept that keeping an abusive client is worth more than your dignity and safety. But 40%, I don't care." He ran his hands over his face. "I don't care about the money. We've rebuilt before, we can rebuild again. You both realize I'm still here, right?" Emily snapped, shutting her laptop forcefully. "And I just witnessed the head of the company sacrifice our biggest client for an employee. I think that confirms the rumors, doesn't it?" Michael turned to her, his voice dangerously low. "Emily, I would do the same for any employee in this company who was being harassed. Gender, position, it doesn't matter." "Of course you would." Emily laughed humorlessly. "It's a total coincidence that it's exactly for her, the same person you were seen having an intimate conversation with on the terrace last Friday, the same one who suddenly never has projects cut, even when the entire department went through layoffs." "Enough," Michael's voice thundered. "You're out of line." "Me?" Emily stood up, her eyes blazing. "I've worked here for 8 years. 8. I was by your side when Amanda betrayed you, when you lost everything and had to start over. I stayed up late helping to rebuild this agency. And in 6 months she shows up and suddenly I'm the one who's out of line?" The truth hit Sarah like a punch. "You're in love with him." Emily froze, her face turning red. "Emily," Michael said gently, but she interrupted him. "No. Don't pretend you didn't know. Don't pretend that all those years meant nothing." She grabbed her laptop, her hands trembling. "But I get it now. I never had a chance, did I? Because I was just the efficient assistant, the one who solved your problems, the one who was always available. But she looked at Sarah with something between anger and pain. "She's different. She's the one who wasn't available, the one who was complicated, the one who made you chase after her." "Emily, I never wanted to give you false hope," Michael started. "You didn't. That's the pathetic part. I created hope on my own. I imagined that one day you would look at me and see more than just an assistant." She laughed humorlessly. But that's the story of my life, isn't it? Always the best friend, never the chosen one. She left before anyone could respond, leaving Michael and Sarah alone in the cold room. Sarah felt nauseous. I didn't know. I should have noticed. I should have been clearer with her. Michael sat heavily in the chair. Damn it, I messed everything up. I lost the biggest client, hurt Emily, and the rumors about us are going to explode now. Maybe we should stop, Sarah said, her voice small, before more people get hurt. Michael looked at her intensely. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore, Sarah exploded, standing up. 3 weeks ago, my life was complicated but manageable. Now I'm at the center of gossip. I just got harassed by a client. My boss's assistant is in love with him and wants to kill me, and you just threw away 40% of the company's revenue because of me. It wasn't because of you. It was for principles. Principles don't pay the bills, Michael. Principles don't protect the jobs of 50 people. Michael's phone rang. He answered with a brusque, "Hello?" And Sarah saw his face pale. When? All of them? Damn. Okay, I'm on it. He hung up, looking like he had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. What happened? Mark, my former business partner. His voice was tense. He just called a board meeting. He's saying that my inappropriate relationship with an employee is compromising business decisions. That losing the contract with Wilson proves it. They want an emergency meeting. No, Sarah whispered. It'll be okay. I'll handle it. But he didn't seem convinced. Sarah watched him leave, feeling the world crumble around her. She returned to her office, ignoring the stares from everyone, and locked the door. 5 minutes later, Jake knocked timidly. Sarah? Are you okay? No. What happened in the meeting? Sarah told him everything, Mark's harassment, Emily's outburst, the board being called. Jake listened in silence, his face growing more worried. Damn, he finally said, this is going to get ugly. I know. Are you really involved with Michael? Sarah looked at her assistant, the guy who had worked alongside her for 2 years, who knew her crazy schedules and her obsession with lists, who had picked up Ethan from school when she was stuck in meetings. He deserved honesty. I don't know what we are, but yes, there's something happening, and it's destroying everything. Jake sat in the chair across from her. Can I give you some unsolicited advice? Please. You're the most controlled person I know. Everything in your life is planned, organized, predictable, and that has kept you safe after the divorce. I get it, but... He hesitated. You seem more alive in the past few weeks than in 2 years working here, even with all the chaos. Being alive doesn't pay the bills. But is that all there is to life? Jake shrugged. Sorry, I don't want to seem insensitive. I know you have Ethan, responsibilities, but you deserve to be happy too. After he left, Sarah was alone with her thoughts. She picked up her phone, scrolling to the last message from Michael that she hadn't responded to. When can I see you again? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could end this now, send a message saying it had been a mistake, that they needed to keep their distance, that it was better for everyone. But she couldn't, because Jake was right. For the first time in 3 years, she felt alive, scared and confused. Yes, but alive. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? Sarah Johnson? A cold, professional female voice. Yes, this is Amanda Thompson, Michael's ex-wife. A pause. I think we need to talk. Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. About what? About you destroying his life. About how you made him lose the company's biggest client. About how in 6 months you managed to do what I couldn't do in 10 years of marriage. Turn him into someone irrational and impulsive. The voice was sweet as poisoned honey. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee at the Corner Cafe, noon. or I'll tell the board some things about your performance review from last year that I know were inflated. That's blackmail. That's protection. I'm protecting Michael from another woman who just wants to use him. See you tomorrow, Sarah." The call ended. Sarah stared at the phone, feeling the walls close in. Around her, Mark, Emily, the board, and now Michael's ex-wife, all conspiring, all with their own agendas, and she at the center of it all. She grabbed her bag and left the office without telling anyone, ignoring the whispers, ignoring the phone that started ringing. Michael, ignoring everything. She needed the only place where she still felt in control. Her empty apartment, her lists, her predictable routine. But when she got home, she found David waiting at the building door, and the expression on his face said he knew everything. "We need to talk," he said, "about you exposing our son to your inappropriate entanglements at work." And Sarah realized that the worst was yet to come. Sarah looked at David standing at the building door and felt a cold rage rise up her spine. He was wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and jeans that were too loose at the waist. He had lost weight, probably due to the new girlfriend he kept posting about on Instagram. His brown hair was thinning, and there were deep circles under his eyes. But it was the expression of moral superiority on his face that irritated her deeply. "How do you know where I work?" Sarah asked, crossing her arms. "Does it matter? What matters is that I found out you're getting involved with your boss, that you lost a huge client because of this involvement, and that my son is being exposed to this situation. Ethan hasn't been exposed to anything, and my personal life is no longer your concern." "It is my concern when it affects my son." David stepped forward, his face red. "What do you think is going to happen when you lose this job, huh? Because that's what's going to happen, Sarah. I've seen it 1,000 times. A woman gets involved with her boss. It becomes gossip. Eventually someone has to leave, and it's never the boss. You don't know anything about my situation. I know you always do this. You always need to control everything, be perfect at everything, and when things spiral out of your control, you crumble." He laughed humorlessly. "It was like that in our marriage. You with your endless lists, your impossible expectations, suffocating any spontaneity. And now you're doing it again, but this time you're dragging Ethan along." The words hit Sarah like slaps, because they were exactly her worst fears vocalized. "You know why I'm here?" David continued, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm here to warn you that I'm going to file for a custody review. I'm going to show the judge that you're in an unstable professional situation, that you're putting romantic relationships above our son's needs, that you can't keep your life under control." Can you do this?" Sarah whispered, but her voice was faltering. "I can, and I will win. Because you are proving exactly what I always said, that you are good at pretending to have everything under control, but inside you are a mess, and I won't let my son grow up in that environment." "Your son!" Sarah exploded, all the frustrations of the past weeks spilling out at once. "Our son, David, that boy you pick up late when you pick him up, that you forget the parent-teacher meeting, who cries when you cancel the weekend because your new girlfriend wants to travel. At least I don't expose him to unstable relationships at work." "You cheated on me!" The words came out like a scream that echoed down the street. A few passers-by stopped to look. "You cheated on me with your intern, remember? And then had the audacity to blame me, to say it was my fault for being too cold, too controlling. So don't come here pretending you care about stability when you destroyed the family we had." David's face turned red, but before he could respond, a voice intervened. "Is everything all right here?" Sarah turned and saw Mr. Thompson, the building superintendent, a 60-year-old man who had known Ethan since he was a baby and always had a mint in his pocket for the boy. "It's fine, Mr. Thompson," Sarah said, trying to control her breathing. "Doesn't seem like it." He looked at David with disapproval. "If you want, I can call the police." Disturbance? Those things? David stepped back. No need. I was just leaving. He looked at Sarah one last time. You'll receive notification from my lawyer soon. And Sarah, when you lose that job and can't support Ethan properly, I'll be there to prove he'd be better off with me. He turned and left, leaving Sarah trembling on the sidewalk. That ex-husband of yours is a piece of work, Mr. Thompson commented, shaking his head. Ethan deserves better. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Sarah ascended to the apartment in a daze. She locked the door, went to the bedroom, and finally allowed the panic to engulf her completely. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees, feeling the walls close in. David was going to try to take Ethan from her. He would use her professional situation, her supposed inappropriate relationships, everything against her. And the most terrifying part? He might succeed. Judges favored parents who seemed more stable, and now, with the loss of the biggest client, the rumors at the office, the complete chaos of her life, she didn't seem stable at all. The phone rang. Michael, for the 10th time. Sarah looked at the screen and finally answered. Where are you? His voice was tense. You left the office without notice, didn't answer any calls. I'm at home. Can I come over? No. Sarah wiped her tears. Ethan gets back from school in an hour. I don't want you here. Silence on the other end. Then, what happened besides the obvious? David. He showed up. He's going to file for custody revision, saying my life is too unstable. Her voice broke. And he might be right. Sarah, listen. No, you listen. She stood up, starting to pace the apartment. In 3 weeks, my life has turned into hell. I lost the respect of my colleagues. My boss lost the biggest client defending my honor. Your ex-wife called me making threats. Your assistant hates me. And now my ex-husband is going to try to take my son from me. All of this because I sent a message by mistake. None of this is your fault. Of course it is. I knew it was risky. I knew it could go wrong. But I went ahead anyway because for 5 minutes I allowed myself to want something just for me, something that wasn't about being the perfect mother or a competent professional. She was crying now, unable to stop. And look what happened, look what I did. Sarah, stop. Breathe. I can't do this, Michael. I can't keep seeing you. I can't risk losing Ethan. He is everything. He is literally all I have. You have more than that. You have talent, you have strength, I have a son, she shouted, and he comes first, always, before you, before me, before everything. And if it means I have to end this before it gets worse, then that's what I will do. The silence on the other end lasted so long that Sarah thought he had hung up. All right, he finally said, his voice empty. If that's what you want, I respect it. But Sarah, you're not giving up because of Ethan. You're giving up because you're scared. Scared of being happy, scared of losing control, scared that if you allow yourself to have something good, it will be taken away from you. It's not. It is. And I understand because I have that fear too. But the difference is, I was willing to take the risk. You weren't. He hung up. Sarah stood there with the phone in her hand, tears streaming silently. He was wrong. He had to be wrong. This was about protecting Ethan, not about fear. But deep down, a voice whispered that maybe he was right. The next morning, Tuesday, Sarah woke up feeling like she had been run over. She barely slept, her mind spinning in circles between David, Michael, Amanda, the possibility of losing Ethan. She prepared the morning coffee on autopilot, helped her son get dressed, packed his lunch. "Mom, are you crying?" Ethan asked as she tied his sneakers. "No, sweetheart, just tired. Is it because of that man who came here, the one from your firm?" Sarah froze. "Why do you ask that?" "You've been different since he came." Sad. Ethan's eyes, so much like hers, were worried. "Is he mean? Can I punch him?" She almost laughed, but it came out as a sob. She pulled her son into a tight hug. No, he's not mean, and you're not going to punch anyone, little hero. Everything will be fine. All right, I promise. Another promise she wasn't sure she could keep. After dropping Ethan off at school, Sarah drove to the cafe where Amanda had arranged their meeting. It was a chic place in Brooklyn, decorated in shades of white and gold, with tiny tables and outrageous prices. Amanda was already there, and Sarah recognized her immediately from the photos that occasionally popped up in searches about Michael. She was stunning, a natural blonde, perfectly tanned skin, wearing a light pink dress that probably cost 3 times Sarah's rent. She had the slimness of someone with a personal trainer, perfectly manicured nails, and professional makeup. Sarah looked at her own outfit, black dress pants that were already fuzzy, a white blouse that needed a better iron, and felt exactly how Amanda probably wanted her to feel: inferior. "Sarah," Amanda waved, smiling as if they were long-time friends. "I'm so glad you came. Please, have a seat." Sarah sat down, declining the offer of coffee. "Let's get straight to the point. What do you want?" "Straight to the point? Not even a, 'Hi, how are you?'" Amanda took a sip of her latte. "All right. I want you to stay away from Michael." "And why would I do that?" "Because you're destroying him. Destroying everything he's built." Amanda leaned forward, her icy blue eyes piercing. "Do you know how long it took him to rebuild that agency after the marriage ended? 2 years of relentless work. Sleeping at the office, no social life, no distractions allowed, and finally he was stable. Finally focused, and then you show up. I didn't ask for any of this. You don't need to ask. Women like you never do. You know exactly how to play the victim, the poor thing that needs saving, single mother, tough life, all of that." Amanda rolled her eyes. "And men like Michael, they're programmed to want to save, especially after I betrayed and destroyed him." You made air quotes around betrayal? Because it wasn't exactly like that. But he never tells the whole story, does he? Amanda smiled bitterly. He doesn't mention that our marriage had been dead for years, that he was married to his work, not to me, that I was alone night after night while he built his empire. And when I finally found someone who saw me, who gave me attention, yes, I took a step I shouldn't have, but I wasn't the villain he paints me as. Sarah didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to defend Michael, but another part recognized the pattern. "Why do you care?" Sarah asked. "You two are divorced. You have your life." "Because he's still important to me, and because I know you're going to end up hurting him, just like all your complications and baggage are going to destroy the company he fought so hard to build." Amanda pulled an envelope from her bag. "So here's my proposal. You back off, end this cleanly. Say you realized it's not going to work, that the complications are too much. And in return—" She slid the envelope across the table. "I guarantee that the board won't receive certain information about your performance reviews from last year." "What information?" "That you benefited from the review, that your numbers didn't justify the raise you received, that Michael personally intervened to ensure you weren't cut during the downsizing." Amanda leaned back. "It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Once the seed of doubt is planted, your reputation never recovers." Sarah felt nauseous. "This is blackmail. This is protection for him and the company." Amanda stood up, tossing some bills on the table. "You have until Friday. After that, I'll do what I have to do." She left, leaving Sarah alone with the envelope on the table. Sarah opened it with trembling hands. Inside were documents, performance reviews, emails between Michael and HR, all marked with yellow post-its, highlighting any mention of her name. And the worst part, Amanda was right. Looking objectively, some numbers did seem to have been adjusted. Not drastically, but enough to raise questions. Sarah tucked the documents into her bag and left the cafe, feeling as if she were walking through a nightmare. In the office, the atmosphere was even worse. Emily barely looked at her. Jason avoided any contact. Even Jake seemed uncomfortable. At 2 in the afternoon, she was summoned to a meeting with HR. Rachel, the HR director, a woman in her 40s with short black hair and red-framed glasses, was far too serious. "Sarah, sit down. I need to ask you some questions about your professional relationship with Michael Thompson." The interrogation lasted an hour. Questions about private meetings, communications outside of work hours, preferential treatment. Sarah answered everything honestly. Yes, they had met, outside of work, but only recently and never in a way that compromised professional decisions. No, she had never received preferential treatment because of a personal relationship. But she could see on Rachel's face that they didn't completely believe her. "Look, Sarah," Rachel finally said, taking off her glasses and looking at her. "Off the record, you're an excellent professional. Everyone who has worked directly with you knows that. But perception matters. And right now, the perception is that your achievements weren't entirely deserved, that you had special help. And what am I supposed to do about that? Honestly, either you and Michael make it extremely clear that there's nothing going on, or one of you needs to leave the company." Rachel put her glasses back on. "And between us women, it's never the man who leaves." Sarah returned to her office feeling completely defeated. All scenarios led to the same conclusion. She had to choose between Michael and literally the rest of her life. When she looked through the glass wall, she saw Michael on the other side of the open office. He was standing near one of the designer's desks, but looking directly at her, even from a distance. Sarah could see the exhaustion on his. Sarah felt the tension in her shoulders. Their phones vibrated simultaneously. His message: "The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow. They're going to vote on my position as CEO. Sorry for dragging you into this," Sarah replied. "Don't apologize. None of this is your fault." "It is. Because I knew it was risky and I went ahead anyway, because for once in my life I wanted something just for me, something that wasn't about building companies or maintaining appearances." The words echoed exactly what she had told him the night before. They were alike, two compulsive controllers who had finally lost control and didn't know how to deal with the consequences. "What are you going to do?" she asked. The answer came quickly. "Fight. For the company, for my position, for the right to have a personal life without being crucified for it, and for you, if you'll let me." Sarah looked at the message, at Amanda's envelope in her bag, at Ethan smiling in the photo on her phone's lock screen. And she realized that for the first time in her life, she had no idea what the right decision was. Tuesday night was the longest of Sarah's life. After picking Ethan up from school, she tried to keep the normal routine: dinner, homework, bath, bedtime story. But her mind was elsewhere, spinning in endless circles among all the impossible decisions she needed to make. "Mom, you're not paying attention," Ethan complained, pointing to the dinosaur book she was supposedly reading. "You skipped 3 pages." "Sorry, honey." Sarah returned to the right page, but the words jumbled in front of her. "Are you worried about Dad?" Ethan asked suddenly, that eerie intuition children have. "Why do you say that?" "Because last night when I went to sleep, I heard you crying in your room, and today you forgot to cut the crust off my sandwich. You never forget." He looked at her with eyes too serious for 8 years. "Is it my fault? Because I'm not a good enough son?" Sarah's heart shattered. "Ethan, no. Never think that. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, the only thing I got completely right." "Then why are you sad?" How to explain to a child that the adult world was too complicated, that sometimes there were no right answers, just impossible choices. Mommy is going through some problems at work, but it has nothing to do with you, okay? You're perfect. It's the world that's messed up." Ethan snuggled against her. "When I grow up, I'll fix all your problems." Sarah hugged her son tightly, feeling the tears burn. "I know you will, my love." After he fell asleep, Sarah went to the kitchen and did what she always did when she was overwhelmed. She grabbed a notebook and started making lists. Scenario 1, stay with Michael. Pros: personal happiness, maybe. Genuine. Connection: he really sees me. Cons: lose my job, become a pariah in the job market. David using this to take Ethan from me. Destroy Michael's reputation, harm 50 employees at the agency. Scenario 2, end everything. Pros: keep my job, probably. Protect Ethan. Financial stability, no gossip. Cons: go back to loneliness. Always wonder, what if? Prove that I'm too afraid to be happy. Sarah looked at the two lists, at the pros and cons organized in her perfect handwriting, and realized that no amount of planning would change the fact that she was completely lost. The phone vibrated. Message from Lisa. "How are you? I heard from Jason that things are rough at the office. Do you need me?" Sarah looked at the message and made an impulsive decision. "Can you come over? I need to talk to someone." 40 minutes later, Lisa was sitting on Sarah's couch, holding a bottle of wine she had brought. Lisa was 37, with curly hair always tied up in a high bun, and she was a freelance graphic designer, which meant she worked in pajamas and had strong opinions about everything. "So," Lisa poured 2 generous glasses of red wine, "tell me all about this mess." Sarah told her everything. Not just the last few weeks, but everything since the divorce. The loneliness that gnawed at her, the constant fear of failing as a mother, the obsessive need to control every aspect of her life to keep it from falling apart. And Michael, how he had come into her life like a hurricane that destroyed all her carefully constructed control. "And now," Sarah concluded, taking a big sip of wine, "I need to choose. And I don't know how." Lisa was silent for a moment, just watching her friend. "Can I be brutally honest? Please. You're not really asking whether you should stay with Michael or not. You already know the answer. You're in love with him. Anyone with eyes can see that." Lisa leaned forward. "The real question is, are you going to allow yourself to be happy? Or are you going to spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for a marriage that failed 3 years ago?" "It's not about punishment. It's about protecting Ethan." "Bullshit." Lisa emphasized the word in English. "Ethan needs a happy mum, not a martyr. Do you think he doesn't notice how you sacrifice yourself every single day? How you never do anything for yourself? What message do you think that sends him? That family comes first. That love means suffering. That you have to completely erase yourself to be a good mother." Lisa shook her head. "Sarah, I love you, but you need to hear this. David messed you up psychologically. He convinced you that you're too controlling, too cold, too difficult, and you internalized it so deeply that now when someone genuinely good comes along, you're looking for reasons to sabotage. It's not sabotage, it's consequences. That's okay." Lisa took her friend's hand. "And what about David threatening to take custody? Let him try. You have 3 years of being a present, consistent, dedicated mother. He has 3 years of sporadic visits and overdue child support. No judge is going to take Ethan away from you because of office gossip." Sarah wanted to believe. God, how she wanted to believe. "What if you're wrong? What if I'm right? Sarah, you're 36. You still have time to build a life that's more than just obligations and responsibilities. A life that includes love, partnership, happiness." Lisa squeezed her hand. "But you need to choose that. No one can make that choice for you." After Lisa left, it was past midnight. Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her room, her friend's words echoing in her mind. Was she sabotaging herself? Was she using Ethan as an excuse not to take risks? Her phone lit up with a new message. Michael, I can't sleep. I keep thinking that maybe you're right. Maybe I'm selfish wanting this, when I know it could hurt you. But then I remember the way you smile when you think I'm not looking, and I can't regret it. Sarah typed and deleted 5 different responses before finally sending, I can't sleep either, and I can't regret it, no matter how much I should. The response came immediately. Can I call you? Sarah looked at the phone at the closed door of Ethan's room and pressed the call button. Hi. His voice sounded tired, hoarse, but warmed something inside her. Hi. Comfortable silence, just the sound of both their breaths. Sarah, Michael finally said, I don't want to pressure you. I don't want to force you to choose between me and your life. But I need you to know one thing. What? In the last 2 years since the divorce, I've been on autopilot. I woke up, went to the office, worked late, came home, slept, repeat, without feeling anything, without wanting anything, just existing. He paused, and Sarah heard him swallow hard. And then you sent that message. And suddenly I was feeling everything again. Anger, fear, hope, desire. And yes, it created a mess. But I prefer to feel everything and deal with the consequences than go back to that dead life. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. I'm so scared. Me too. Terrified. He laughed without humor. Tomorrow the board could kick me out of the company I built. It could destroy my reputation. And even knowing that, the only thing that really terrifies me is the idea of losing you. Michael, just tell me one thing. Do you feel the same? Because if you don't, if I'm the only one in this illusion, tell me now and I'll stop. I'll respect it. Step back and we'll go on with our lives. Sarah closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel everything she had tried to suppress in the last few weeks. I feel it. God, how I feel it. And it terrifies me because I don't know how to make this work without destroying everything. Then figure it out with me. One day at a time, no perfect plans, no total control, just us trying. It was exactly the opposite of everything Sarah was. No lists, no spreadsheets, no scenarios predicting every possible outcome. Just trusting and trying. Okay, she whispered, one day at a time. Wednesday dawned with a heavy sky, a sign of a storm. Sarah woke up with a strange mix of terror and determination. Today would be the board meeting that would decide Michael's future at the company. And she had decided that, regardless of the outcome, she would no longer hide. She dressed carefully, a grey suit she only wore for important presentations, medium heels, hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Light, but professional makeup. If she was going to face chaos, at least she would do it looking in control. Ethan noticed the difference at breakfast. You look nice, Mom. Is there an important meeting? Yes, sweetie, a very important one. Are you going to win? Sarah smiled, kissing the top of his head. I'll do my best. At the office, the tension was palpable. Everyone knew about the board meeting. Groups formed in whispers, speculating about what would happen. Emily was at her desk, but she had deep, dark circles under her eyes, and her makeup couldn't hide that she had been crying. Sarah walked straight past, entered her office, and started working. But at 10 o'clock, her phone rang. Michael's office number. Sarah, it's Michael. Can you come up here? Please? She climbed the stairs with her heart racing. The door to his office was open. He was sitting behind the desk but stood up when she entered. The meeting is in an hour, he said without preamble, and I need to tell you something first. Okay, if they vote for my exit, I'll accept it. I won't fight if that's what protects the company. He walked up to her, getting close, but not touching. But I won't regret anything that happened between us, and I won't let them destroy your reputation in the process. How do you plan to do that? I'll make it clear in the record that all Professional decisions involving you were based on merit, not personal relationship. I'll show numbers, results, objective evaluations, and I'll admit that yes, there is something between us, but it started recently and never compromised business decisions. They won't believe it. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's on record, that when you look for another job, when you go for interviews, you can point to this and say, look, here's the truth. Your reputation won't be destroyed because of me. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Are you willing to lose everything for this? It's not losing everything. It's having my priorities straight for the first time in years. He finally touched her, just the tips of his fingers on her face. Now go. I don't want you here when the board arrives. I don't want them to think you... Marina descended to her office, but she couldn't concentrate on anything. At 11 o'clock, she began to see the board members arrive. 6 men in dark suits and 2 equally formal women, all with serious expressions. Then, at 11:15, Amanda entered the office. Marina watched her from her glass room. Amanda looked impeccable as always, holding a briefcase and greeting everyone with familiarity. It was obvious she knew the board members, probably from the time she was married to Michael. Emily stood up, intercepting Amanda. There was a brief conversation, Emily pointing to the stairs, Amanda shaking her head and showing the briefcase. Then Emily picked up a phone, spoke briefly, and hung up with a pale face. Minutes later, the meeting began. Marina watched through the glass walls. She couldn't hear anything, but she could see the body language. Michael speaking, gesturing, board members taking notes, Amanda standing up, showing something from the briefcase. And then, surprisingly, Emily entered the meeting room. What was happening? Marina couldn't take her eyes off the scene upstairs. Emily was speaking now, animatedly, pointing to papers in the briefcase she had brought herself. Amanda looked confused. Michael looked hopeful. Half an hour later, the meeting ended. The board members left first, with inscrutable expressions. Amanda exited next, visibly upset, almost rushing to the elevator. Emily stayed in the room with Michael. Marina was about to explode with anxiety when her phone rang. "Can you come up?" "Michael." The voice sounded strange. She rushed upstairs, not caring who she saw. She entered the room and found Michael and Emily. "What happened?" Marina asked, looking between the two. It was Emily who answered. "I told the truth." "What truth?" "About the performance evaluations, about the numbers, about everything." Emily's eyes were red, but firm. "Amanda tried to use forged documents to prove that Michael favored you, but I have all the originals, and I showed the board that she tampered with the documents." Marina's eyes widened. "Why? Why did you do that?" Emily looked at her, and there was pain in her eyes, but also something like peace. "Because I spent the whole night thinking, and I realized I was being exactly the kind of person I hate, someone who destroys others out of personal bitterness." She looked at Michael. "You never gave me hope. You were nothing but professional and kind. I created a fantasy in my head, and I almost ruined your life because of it." "Emily," Michael began, but she interrupted him. "No, let me finish." She took a deep breath. "Marina, I hated you without really knowing you, because you had what I wanted. But last night I was looking at the real numbers, the objective evaluations, and I realized that you really are excellent at what you do, that you deserve everything you've achieved, and that I was being small and petty." Marina didn't know what to say. Thank you." "And about the board?" Michael asked, still seeming not to fully believe it. "They voted unanimously." Emily finally smiled despite the tears. "You stay, and Amanda was formally notified that any future attempts at defamation will result in legal action." Michael collapsed into the chair, running his hands over his face. "Damn! Damn!" Marina and Emily exchanged a look, and for the first time there, Was understanding there. "I'm going to give you two some time," Emily said, walking to the door. She paused before leaving. "And Marina, I'm sorry, really, for everything. I accept, and thank you, for doing the right thing." When they were alone, Michael stood up and pulled Marina into a tight embrace. She felt his body trembling. "I thought I had lost everything," he murmured against her hair. "The company, you, everything. But you didn't lose. I can still lose you. If David goes through with the custody review, if... One day at a time, remember." Marina stepped back to look into his eyes. "You told me that yesterday. No perfect plans, no total control, just trying. Are you willing to do that, even with all the chaos?" "Especially because of the chaos. Because for the first time in 3 years I'm feeling instead of just surviving." Michael kissed her, soft and deep, and Marina felt something inside her finally relax. It wasn't the end of problems. There was still David, still gossip, still 1,000 complications. But for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. When they separated, Michael held her face in his hands. "There's one more thing." "What?" "I want to meet Ethan. For real, not hidden, not secret. I want you to let me into your life completely, mess and all." Marina felt the familiar panic rise, but she took a deep breath. "Okay, but slowly. And if he doesn't like you, then we'll deal with it. Together. Together." It wasn't a word that had been part of Marina's vocabulary for a long time, but maybe it was time to learn. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster. Marina and Michael agreed to take it slow, discreet dates away from the office, building something real before making it public. But in an office of 50 people, where everyone knew each other, discreet was almost impossible. The rumors changed tone. They were no longer malicious. After the truth about Amanda's attempt to sabotage came to light, and with Emily openly defending Marina, the gossip became more speculative than accusatory. Are they really together? Will it work out? I bet he'll propose in 6 months. Marina tried to ignore it, but it was impossible not to notice the looks, the whispers that ceased when she entered the break room. It was Jason who finally broke the ice one Friday afternoon. He showed up in her office with 2 coffees and a somewhat awkward expression. "So, can I come in?" Marina nodded. He sat down, nervously stirring his coffee cup. "Look, I know I've been kind of a jerk lately. Weeks, like ignoring you and all." He didn't look her in the eyes. "It's just that I had hopes, and when I realized you were with Michael, I got jealous and acted like an idiot." "Jason, no, let me finish." He finally looked at her. "But then Emily told me everything that happened. Amanda trying to screw you over, the harassment from Mark Wilson, all the pressure you were under. And I realized that while I was being a whiny baby about rejection, you were fighting to keep everything together." He extended one of the coffee cups. "So, peace? And sorry for being a jerk?" Sarah took the coffee, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "Peace. And thank you for finally talking to me. Michael is a lucky guy, you know. I think we're both lucky. In different and complicated ways, but lucky." After Jason left, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Maybe things were really getting better, but then her phone rang, unknown number. "Hello? Sarah Johnson? This is Dr. Paul Harris, David's lawyer." The voice was formal, cold. "I'm calling to inform you that my client has filed for a custody review. You will be officially notified in the coming days." Sarah's stomach dropped. "On what grounds?" "Professional and personal instability, inappropriate involvement with superiors that compromises your ability to provide a stable environment for the child. Several witnesses are willing to confirm changes in your behavior and priorities." That's ridiculous. The court will decide, Ma'am. Have a good day. He hung up, leaving Sarah with the phone in her hand and her heart racing. She knew David would do this, but knowing theoretically and receiving confirmation were two completely different things. Her hands trembled as she searched for her lawyer's number, Dr. Fernando, who had handled the divorce. She scheduled an urgent meeting for Monday. When she left the office that night, Michael was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car. He had made sure never to wait for her inside the office, always keeping some physical distance in the workplace. But there, in the empty parking lot at 7 in the evening, it could just be them. "From your face, it wasn't good news," he said as she approached. Sarah told him about the lawyer's call. She saw Michael's jaw tighten, his eyes darken. "That son of a bitch is really going to do this. He said he would. I just didn't want to believe he was capable." Michael pulled her into a hug. "We'll fight this, together. You've been a present and dedicated mother for 3 years. He's been a mediocre father on his best days. But what if it's not enough?" Her voice came out muffled, against his chest. "What if the judge thinks my life is too unstable, that being involved with my boss proves some kind of poor judgment? Then we prove that's not true, that you're an exemplary professional who just happens to be in a relationship with someone. The two things don't exclude each other." Sarah wanted to believe, but fear was a living, pulsing thing in her chest. Saturday arrived sunny and warm, one of those rare June days in New York where winter seemed to have taken a break. Michael had invited Sarah and Ethan to spend the day at Central Park. Neutral, public, no pressure. Sarah spent the morning preparing Ethan. "Remember Michael, that gentleman who works with me? The one who came here that day?" Ethan was assembling a pterodactyl puzzle in the living room. "That's the one. He's going to spend the day with us today, in the park." Ethan stopped fitting the pieces, looking at her with that disconcerting seriousness. "Is he your boyfriend?" Sarah swallowed hard. "It's complicated, but yes, kind of." "Is he going to live here?" "No, sweetheart. Nothing is going to change in our routine. We're just going to get to know him better." "And what if I don't like him?" "Then we'll deal with it. But you need to give him a chance, okay? He's a good person." Ethan returned to the puzzle, but Sarah could see the gears turning in his little head. They found Michael near the main gate of the park at 11 o'clock. He was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, but Sarah noticed the nervousness in the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. In his hands, he carried a large box. "Hi," he said, smiling at Sarah, but clearly focused on Ethan. "Hi," Ethan replied, half hidden behind his mother. Michael crouched down to be at the boy's level. "So, Ethan, your mom told me you like dinosaurs." "I do." "What's your favorite?" "Spinosaurus, because of the sail on its back and because it ate fish, not other dinosaurs." "Ah, a carnivore with a fish diet. Interesting." Michael seemed genuinely thoughtful. "I always liked the Ankylosaurus, the one with the tail that looks like a giant mace." Ethan stepped out a bit from behind Sarah, interested. "You know about dinosaurs?" "A little. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a paleontologist." "Me too." For the first time, Ethan smiled. "But my teacher said there aren't many fossils in the US." "There are. Have you heard of the American Museum of Natural History? They have amazing fossils there." Michael extended the box. "By the way, I brought something for you." Ethan looked at Sarah, silently asking for permission. She nodded. He took the box and carefully opened it. Inside was a complete fossil excavation kit, a replica of a Tyrannosaurus skeleton buried in plaster that needed to be excavated with toy tools. Ethan's eyes widened. "Seriously? For me? Seriously? I thought we could assemble it together, if you want." "I want." Ethan's smile was genuine now. Sarah felt her eyes welling up. Michael had hit the nail on the head. He hadn't tried to buy the boy's affection with an expensive, generic gift, but had chosen something that showed he had really paid attention, that he cared about Ethan's interests. They spent the day in the park. They walked along the bike path. They had ice cream and had a picnic by the lake. Michael and Ethan were engrossed in the excavation kit, while Sarah watched them interact. Michael patiently explaining excavation techniques, Ethan chattering non-stop about dinosaur facts. "Did you know the Tyrannosaurus had a brain the size of an avocado? But it was really smart anyway," Ethan said, using the brush to gently clean a piece of the skeleton. "Kind of like some people I know at work," Michael replied teasingly. "Small brain, but think they know everything." Ethan laughed, a genuine, spontaneous laugh, and Sarah felt something warm in her chest. But not everything was perfect. Around 3 in the afternoon, while Michael went to get water, Ethan turned to Sarah. "Is he leaving too? Like Dad?" The question hit Sarah hard. "Ethan, because I like him. But if he leaves, it will hurt. So maybe it's better if I don't like him too much." Sarah pulled her son into a hug. "Sweetheart, Michael isn't like your dad. He won't leave just because things get tough." "How do you know?" "Because I know him, and because he knows that if he hurts you, he'll have to deal with me." She tried to make a joke, but her voice came out choked. When Michael returned, he noticed the change in atmosphere. "Is everything okay?" Sarah looked at him, at the man who had become essential in her life over the past few weeks, and realized that Ethan was right to be afraid, because she was too. Afraid of getting used to this, of building something and then having it all crumble. "Yeah," she lied, "just tired." But Michael wasn't fooled. Later, when they left Ethan watching cartoons on the phone, he pulled Sarah aside. "What really happened?" She told him about Ethan's question about his fears. "He's already had his heart broken by his dad. He can't go through that again, and neither can I." "Sarah, look at me." Michael held her face. "I'm not going anywhere. Not when things get tough, not when life gets complicated, never. Unless you tell me to leave, I'm staying." "How can you promise that?" "Because for the first time in years, I've found something I really want to fight to keep." He kissed her forehead. "You and Ethan. You're worth any fight." Sarah wanted to believe it, but a voice whispered that this was too good to be true, that eventually he would see all her neuroses, all her obsessive control, all her baggage, and realize it wasn't worth it. In the late afternoon, when they said goodbye in the parking lot of the park, Ethan surprised everyone by hugging Michael. "Thanks for the gift. It was the best." Michael seemed touched. "You're welcome, champ. Can we build another part next weekend?" Ethan looked at Sarah, hopeful. She nodded, feeling her heart tighten. "Sure." Ethan smiled, then added seriously, "But you have to promise you won't disappear. Like really promise." Michael crouched down again, looking the boy in the eyes. "I promise, Ethan, for real." "Okay, then." And just like that, Ethan accepted. If only Sarah could do the same. Monday came too quickly. Sarah had a meeting with Dr. Frank at 9 in the morning in a law office in Midtown, decorated in dark mahogany and legal books that probably cost more than her car. Dr. Frank was in his 50s, completely white hair, metal-framed glasses, and had a reputation for being a pit bull in family cases. "So," he said after reviewing all the documents David had submitted, "he's claiming professional instability based on office gossip and a relationship with his superior, which is totally legitimate and doesn't affect my ability to be a mother," Sarah argued. "I know that. You know that. But we have to prove it to a judge." Dr. Frank leaned back in his chair. "The good news is that David has a terrible track record. Late child support, inconsistent visits. We have documentation of everything. The bad news is that judges can be unpredictable when it comes to morality. But there's nothing immoral. For you and me, no. For an old-school conservative judge, who knows? He sighed. I'll be frank with you, Sarah. This case could go in any direction. But we have good arguments. You have stable employment, consistent income, active participation in Ethan's school life. David has recent good intentions that don't hold up in the long term. How long will this take? Months, maybe a year. These processes are slow. He observed her expression. I know this isn't what you want to hear. Sarah left the office feeling worse than when she entered. A year of uncertainty, of constant fear, of looking at Ethan and wondering how much longer they would have together. In the office, she tried to focus on work. There was a big event coming up, the launch of a new line of smart devices for a tech company. It should have been exciting, but she could barely care. Michael passed by her office around noon. He didn't come in, keeping up appearances, but made eye contact through the glass. Lunch? She shook her head. She didn't have the stomach for food. He didn't insist, but 20 minutes later her phone buzzed. I know you're going through a lot, but don't push me away. Please, let me be here for you. Sarah looked at the message, at that man visible through the glass walls of her office, already engrossed in another meeting, and she realized that part of her was still, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for him to realize that she was too much work, too much complication, too much baggage. I'm not pushing you away, she typed back, just processing. Process with me, not alone. But Sarah had spent 3 years processing everything alone. She didn't know how to do it differently. At night, when she picked up Ethan from school, the boy was unusually quiet. Are you okay? She looked at the outstretched hand, at the man who was asking her to trust him, to allow herself a moment without control, every fiber of her being screamed to make a list of reasons why this was a bad idea. She took his hand. They danced slowly in the middle of the room, swayed by Milton Nascimento, singing about trains and encounters. Michael was surprisingly good at dancing, guiding her firmly, but leaving space for her to move. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder and for the first time in weeks allowed herself to just exist in the moment. When I was a child, Michael said softly as they danced, my mother always said that life is like dancing. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. But the important thing is to be in sync with your partner. Your mother sounds wise. She was. She passed away 5 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. You don't talk much about her. Because it hurts, and I'm not good at processing pain. I prefer to bury it and keep moving. He laughed humorlessly, like what I did after the divorce. Just work, no feelings, building walls so high that no one could get close. And then I sent that message by mistake. And then you sent that message by mistake, he confirmed, and it crumbled everything I had built. So carefully, the music changed to window pane, more melancholic. Sarah felt a wave of emotion for everything that had happened, for everything that was yet to come, for the fear and hope intertwined that were impossible to separate. Michael, she said, still dancing, what if we can't make it? What if it's too complicated? Then at least we tried, and we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if. He pulled back a bit to look into her eyes. Sarah, I can't promise it will be easy. I can't promise we won't fight or disagree or have difficult moments, but I can promise that I will show up every day. I will fight for this, for us, for you, and for Ethan. Tears returned, but they were different now, not from fear, but from something dangerously close to hope. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, how to trust completely, how to let go of control. You don't have to let go, just share. Let me carry half the weight. He smiled gently. You don't have to be strong alone all the time. Sarah kissed him, deeply and desperately, as if she could transfer all. The fear and all the hope in that kiss. They moved from the middle of the room to the sofa, and for long hours they just existed there, talking, kissing, sometimes in comfortable silence. It was almost midnight when Sarah checked her phone and saw 3 missed calls. Blood ran cold. "Shit! Shit!" She jumped up. "It's my mom!" she called back with trembling hands. Her mother answered on the first ring. "Sarah! Thank God! I tried to call you 1,000 times." "What happened? Ethan?" "He's fine. Calm down. Ethan is fine, sleeping. I came here because you weren't answering and I got worried. I used the spare key." Sarah collapsed on the sofa, relief making her dizzy. "Mom, I went out for a bit. I left the intercom on, but—" "You went out? Sarah, is Ethan alone in the apartment?" Her mother's voice was filled with disapproval. I know, it was wrong. I just needed to get out for an hour." There was a pause on the other end. "Where are you?" Sarah looked at Michael, who was watching tensely. "At a friend's house." "Friend?" Her mother's tone was skeptical. "Sarah Louisa Johnson, I didn't raise you to leave your child alone while you—" "Mom, please, not now." Sarah felt tears threatening again. "I already feel like the worst mother in the world. You don't need to rub it in my face." Another pause, longer this time. When her mother spoke again, her voice was softer. "Honey, what's going on? And don't tell me it's nothing, because I know you for 36 years. And Sarah told her, briefly, but she told, about David's process, her relationship with Michael, the fears that consumed her. Oh, Sarah! Her mother's sigh carried so much weight. "Come home. I'll stay with Ethan tonight. You need to sleep, and we'll talk properly tomorrow. Mom, no arguing. Come." Sarah hung up and looked at Michael. "I need to go. I heard. Your mom sounds intimidating." "She is, but she's also amazing, just worried." Sarah began to gather her things. "I'm sorry it ended like this." "Don't apologize." He helped her with her bag. "Your mom is right. You shouldn't have left Ethan alone, even with the intercom." The statement hit Sarah like a slap. "I know that. You don't need to—" Hey, I'm not judging you." Michael held her face. "I'm saying your mom loves you and is worried, and that you need to stop carrying so much guilt. You made a judgment error because you were overwhelmed. It doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you human." Sarah nodded, but she couldn't shake the knot in her throat. On the way home, with the streets of New York empty and silent in the early morning, Sarah couldn't stop thinking, was David right? Was she so obsessed with her own life, with her own desires, that she was neglecting Ethan? When she got home, her mother was sitting on the sofa reading a book. Mrs. Johnson was 62 years old, with grey hair always tied up in a bun, honey-coloured eyes identical to Sarah's, and an expression that could make anyone confess their sins. "Sit," she simply said. Sarah sat down, feeling 16 again, waiting for a scolding. "This Michael," Mrs. Johnson began, "is he good for you?" The question caught Sarah off guard. Yes, I think so." "You think or you know?" "Mom, Sarah, I saw you shattered after the divorce. I watched you rebuild yourself piece by piece, transforming into this strong and independent woman. And Mrs. Johnson set the book aside. "I'm so proud of you. But I also saw you build walls so high that no one could get close, not even me. I didn't mean to—" "I know. You were protecting yourself, protecting Ethan. But dear, there comes a time when you need to choose to live again, not just survive." "But what about Ethan? What if David—" "David won't accomplish anything. That man barely remembers to call his own son. No judge in the world will grant him custody." Mrs. Johnson leaned forward. "But you need to stop living in so much fear. Fear of being happy, fear of failing, fear of everything. It's not that simple. I know it's not. But I also know you deserve more than this life you've built, all work and responsibility with no room for joy. She took her daughter's hand. If this Michael makes you happy, if he treats you and Ethan well, then fight for it. Don't let David or fear or anything stop you. Sarah hugged her mother, feeling for the first time in weeks that maybe she wasn't completely alone in this fight. Thank you, Mom. Now, go to sleep. And tomorrow you tell me everything about this mysterious boyfriend. And when I say everything, I mean everything. The following days were a strange mix of normalcy and underlying tension. Sarah returned to her routine, work, picking up Ethan, dinner, homework. But now there were messages from Michael throughout the day, quick coffee meetups before the office, calls at night after Ethan was asleep. And slowly, very slowly, Sarah began to relax. Not completely. She still made her lists, still planned every detail. But she started to let Michael in, sharing worries, dividing decisions. On Friday, 2 weeks after that night at Michael's apartment, they took Ethan to the American Museum of Natural History that Michael had mentioned. Ethan was ecstatic, running from one skeleton to another, bombarding Michael with 1,000 questions that he patiently answered. "You're good with him," Sarah commented as they watched Ethan admire a pterodactyl fossil. "He makes it easy. He's an amazing kid. He likes you. Yesterday he asked me if you could have dinner with us every day." Michael looked at her, surprised and clearly touched. "And what did you say?" "That we need to take it slow, that we don't want to confuse him." Sarah hesitated, but that maybe a few dinners a week could be possible. "Sarah, I'm still scared. I probably always will be a little. But I also realize that fear can't stop me from living." She took his hand. "So, one day at a time?" "One day at a time," he confirmed, smiling. It was then that Sarah's phone rang. Number from Dr. Frank's office. "Hello?" "Sarah, it's Frank. I have news." She couldn't read his tone. "What is it?" "David dropped the case." Sarah almost dropped the phone. "What?" "He withdrew the custody review request. Completely, no conditions." "But why?" "Apparently, his girlfriend got pregnant. And suddenly, he doesn't want the responsibility of having Ethan full-time." Dr. Frank couldn't hide the disdain in his voice. "Typical." Sarah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All that tension, all that fear, and David simply gave up because he had a new priority. "So, it's over?" "It's over. Ethan stays with you, with no changes in custody or support." When she hung up, the tears finally fell, from relief, from anger, from accumulated exhaustion. "What happened?" Michael was beside her, concerned. "He gave up. David gave up on everything." Michael pulled her into a tight embrace, and Sarah finally allowed herself to break down. All the weeks of tension, of fear, of sleepless nights, it all came out in a cry she couldn't control anymore. Ethan ran to them, frightened. "Mom, why are you crying?" Sarah knelt down, wiping her tears and forcing a smile. "Because sometimes adults cry when they're happy, sweetheart, and I'm very, very happy." "Why?" "Because we're going to be together. Just you and me, our family, no changes." Ethan hugged his mother tightly. "I'm happy too." And when Sarah looked up and saw Michael watching them, his eyes also misty, she realized that maybe just you and me wasn't entirely true anymore. Maybe, just maybe, they were becoming a us of 3. August arrived with that dry cold typical of New York winters, the kind that made your bones ache and the apartment windows fog up at dawn. Sarah woke up on a Saturday morning and for the first time in months didn't feel the familiar weight of anxiety crushing her chest. David had given up, the job was stable, and Michael was becoming part of her life in a way she never thought possible. He was having dinner with them 3 times a week now. Sometimes he brought ingredients and they cooked together, a glorious mess of flour scattered and sauce splattering, with Ethan in the middle trying to help and usually getting in the way. Other times he just showed up with pizza and that smile that still made Sarah's stomach flip. At the office, the dynamic had changed. It was no longer uncomfortable. People had accepted that yes, the event coordinator was dating the CEO and the world hadn't ended because of it. Jason even joked about being the most unsuccessful third wheel in New York. Emily had requested a transfer to the branch in New Jersey. A fresh start, she said, and Sarah respected that. But not everything was perfect. That Saturday morning, while making pancakes, one of the few things she could do without burning, Sarah received a call from Rachel in HR. "Sarah, sorry to call on the weekend, but it's important." The tone made Sarah's stomach tighten. "What happened?" "Mark Wilson, the owner of the grocery store chain. Do you remember him?" As if, Sarah wished she could forget the man who had harassed her months ago. "I remember. He sued the agency, claiming defamation and breach of contract." Rachel sighed. "And he specifically named you in the lawsuit, saying you falsely accused him of harassment to cover up professional incompetence." Sarah felt the world spin. "That's a lie. Everything I said was true. We have recordings." "I know. The legal department is already handling it. But it's going to be public, Sarah. There will be hearings, testimonies, and the media will likely cover it because he's a public figure." After hanging up, Sarah stood in the kitchen, spatula still in hand, pancakes burning in the pan. The smell of smoke finally pulled her out of her trance. "Mom! It's on fire!" Ethan shouted, pointing at the skillet. Sarah quickly turned off the heat, tossing the skillet in the sink. "Sorry, sweetheart. Mommy got distracted." "Is everything okay?" Ethan looked at her with a concern no 8-year-old should have. "Yes, just work." She forced a smile. "How about we order cheese bread from the bakery on the corner instead of pancakes?" As Ethan cheered, Sarah texted Michael, "We need to talk." The response came immediately. "On my way, 20 minutes." Michael arrived in 15, still looking half asleep, wearing a hoodie and ripped jeans. Sarah had never seen him so casual, so human. "Mark is suing the agency," she said bluntly as he walked in, "and he named me specifically." She saw his jaw tighten, his eyes darken. "That son of a bitch! Michael, I can't go through this. I can't have my name dragged through the mud publicly. I can't have Ethan seeing his mom being accused of—" Her voice faltered. Michael pulled her into a hug. "It's not going to come to that. We have evidence. We have recordings of what he said. He doesn't have a case. But the lawsuit is happening. The hearings will be public. People will talk. They will judge. Let them talk." He pulled back to look into her eyes. "Sarah, you did nothing wrong. You were brave enough to report harassment, and if this jerk wants to turn it into a circus, let him, but we won't let him intimidate you." "And the agency? The lawsuit could—" "The agency will survive. We've survived worse." He held her face in his hands. "But you're not going through this alone. We have the best lawyers, we have solid evidence, and you have me by your side, every step of the way." Ethan appeared in the hallway, holding his stuffed dinosaur. "The cheese bread is here. Can we eat?" Michael smiled at the boy. "Let's do it. Can we finish building that Tyrannosaurus afterward?" "Yes, we just need the tail and the ribs." As they ate cheese bread at the kitchen table, with Ethan chattering about dinosaurs and Michael patiently answering every absurd question, Sarah watched the scene and felt something strange in her chest. It was gratitude. But it was also terror, because this thing they were building was so good that it scared her, and experience had taught her that good things had a habit of falling apart. The following weeks were a whirlwind. The news of the lawsuit leaked to the press, and suddenly Sarah's name was on corporate gossip sites. Event coordinator accuses businessman of harassment in alleged scheme to cover up incompetence. CEO sacrifices millionaire client for employee with whom he has a relationship. The comments on the articles were brutal. Just another whiny feminist trying to destroy a successful man. Of course she made this up after getting caught with her boss. Women like her are a cancer in the corporate environment. Sarah tried not to read, but it was impossible. Every comment was a stab, confirming her worst fears about how she would be judged. At the office, there was a general meeting. Michael, with the entire team gathered in the open space, made an announcement. "I know you all saw the news. I know there are speculations and gossip, so I'll be direct." He was serious, the posture of a CEO commanding the room. "Mark Wilson harassed Sarah during work meetings. We have recorded evidence of this. When we confronted him professionally, he terminated the contract. Now he's trying to retaliate with a baseless lawsuit." He paused, looking at each person in the room. "And yes, Sarah and I are in a relationship. But that started after all the events he claims in the lawsuit. More importantly, the decision to confront Mark was mine, not hers. If anyone should be sued, it's me. But he knows that attacking a woman generates more sensationalism." There were murmurs, but mostly of support. "So here's my position. We fight this, together, as a team. Because if we let an abusive client intimidate us, we're saying we tolerate that behavior. And I, personally, would rather shut this agency down than do that." After the meeting, several colleagues approached Sarah. Jason gave her a supportive hug. Jessica, the copywriter, admitted she had experienced harassment at a previous job and never had the courage to report it. Jake, her assistant, simply said, "We're with you, Sarah," until the end. But not everyone was supportive. Some older colleagues, especially the men, murmured that Sarah had been too sensitive, that a compliment wasn't harassment, that she was ruining the life of a respected businessman. "Don't worry," Michael said one night after a particularly tough day. They were at her apartment, Ethan already asleep. "The people that matter know the truth. But what about those who don't? And the future employers, who will Google my name and see all this crap?" Sarah was sitting on the couch, hugging her knees. "I destroyed my own reputation. You defended your dignity. It's not the same thing. In the real world, it's exactly the same thing." Michael sat beside her but didn't touch her. "Then we change the real world. We make this lawsuit so public that it becomes impossible to ignore what he really did. We turn you from a victim into a symbol." "I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be invisible." Sarah looked at him, at this man who was risking his own company, his own reputation, to defend her. "Why are you doing this? It would be so much easier to fire me, make a deal with Mark and move on." "Because I can't look in the mirror if I do that, and because you are worth the fight." He finally touched her, taking her hand. "You always have been." The first hearing was in September, at a courthouse in downtown New York that smelled of old paper and disinfectant. Sarah wore a black suit, her hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup, trying to look as professional as possible. Mark Wilson was there with 3 expensive attorneys, all in pinstripe suits. He waved at her with a fake smile, as if they were old friends. Sarah's stomach churned. Dr. Frank, her attorney, was accompanied by 2 other attorneys from the agency. "Remember," he whispered, "let him speak first. Let him dig his own grave. The recordings speak for themselves." The hearing was technical, filled with legal jargon that Sarah barely understood. But the summary was, Mark's attorney argued that she had misinterpreted professional courtesy as harassment, and that when Mark terminated the contract due to legitimate dissatisfaction with the service, she fabricated the accusations to justify losing the client. When it was Sarah's turn to testify, she was trembling. But she looked directly at the judge, a woman in her 50s with a stern expression, and told everything. The comments about her appearance, the lingering touches, the insinuations that the contract would grow if she were more friendly, the fear she felt, the shame of not having reported it earlier. "And why didn't you report it immediately?" Mark's attorney asked, in an accusatory tone. "Because I was scared. Scared of losing my job, of hurting my colleagues, of not being believed." Sarah looked directly at him. "Scared of exactly what is happening now, having my life turned upside down for daring to tell the truth." Then Dr. Frank played the recordings, Mark's voice clear and unmistakable, making inappropriate comments. "You look especially beautiful today, Sarah. Women like you make meetings worthwhile. If you were a little more flexible, we could really expand this partnership." Mark's face turned red. His attorneys whispered furiously among themselves. When the hearing ended, the judge said she would review the evidence and issue a ruling in 2 weeks. Sarah left the courthouse feeling as if she had run a marathon. Michael was waiting for her outside. He couldn't enter as he was a witness too. "How was it?" he asked. "Humiliating, exhausting, necessary." She leaned against him. "The recordings helped. That jerk is going to pay for this." But as they walked to the car, Sarah saw camera flashes. Journalists. Someone had leaked the hearing times. "Sarah, is it true that you and Michael started your relationship before the incident? Do you think you will win the lawsuit? How do you respond to the accusations that this is all a personal vendetta?" Michael pulled her against him, shielding her from the photographers as they hurried away. "No comments. Respect the legal process." In the car, Sarah finally broke down. "I can't take this. I can't stand being exposed like this. Just 2 more weeks, only 2 more weeks until the ruling." But 2 weeks felt like an eternity. The news exploited the case. Photos of Sarah entering and leaving the courthouse appeared everywhere. Her life was dissected. They found old photos of her with David, speculated about the divorce, mentioned that she was a single mother, as if it were scandalous. Ethan started asking questions. "Mom, why is there a picture of you on Grandma's computer?" "It's work, sweetheart." "But why are people saying mean things about you in the comments?" Sarah felt her heart break. "Because sometimes adult people aren't very nice, but what they say isn't true, okay? I know. You're the best mum in the world." At Ethan's school, some parents began to whisper. Sarah saw the looks when she picked up her son. Judgment, morbid curiosity, sometimes pity. One mother, whom Sarah barely knew, had the audacity to strike up a conversation. "It must be so hard for you, with all this exposure, and with a small child. Haven't you thought about making a quiet settlement?" Sarah smiled coldly. "And teach my son that we should stay silent when we are abused?" "No, thank you." But at night, alone in her room after Ethan was asleep, she cried. Because it was hard. Because the exposure was brutal. Because each day felt like a battle she was losing. Michael came every night. Sometimes he just sat with her in silence. Other times they talked for hours. He shared about his own public exposure during the divorce, when the sordid details of Amanda's betrayal had been office gossip for months. "How did you get through it?" Sarah asked one night. "I didn't get through it. I just survived, one day at a time. And eventually people found something new to gossip about." He held her hand. "But I won't lie. It leaves scars. The feeling of being exposed, judged, dissected, it stays with you." "Great. More trauma to add to the collection." He laughed despite the seriousness of the moment. "Look on the bright side. At least now you have company in counseling." "You go to counseling?" "Every Wednesday at 7. Dr. Smith is a saint for putting up with me." He became serious. "Sarah, there's no shame in seeking professional help, especially going through this." "I know, it's just that..." Adding one more thing to the routine, one more commitment. It's not a commitment, it's an investment in you, in your mental health. He kissed her forehead. Think about it, Sarah thought, and the following week she scheduled her first counseling session in 3 years. The ruling came down on a rainy Thursday in September. Sarah received the call from Dr. Frank at 2 in the afternoon. "We won! Completely!" Sarah almost dropped the phone. "What?" "The judge didn't. She only rejected Marcus's lawsuit but found him guilty of bad faith litigation. He will have to pay all court costs and a fine, and the judge noted that the evidence clearly shows sexual harassment." "So, it's over." "It's over. You're free, Sarah, officially." When she hung up, Sarah sat at her desk, stunned. It was over, really over. Michael appeared at her office door 5 minutes later. From his eyes, it was obvious that Dr. Frank had already called him too. "Come here," he simply said. Sarah stood up and walked over to him, and there, in the middle of the office, with everyone watching, Michael hugged her tightly, and she finally allowed the relief to wash over her completely. "It's over," she whispered against his chest. "It's over," he confirmed, "and you won." When they separated, they realized the entire office was applauding. Jason whistled. Jessica shouted, "That's right!" Even some of the more serious colleagues were smiling. Sarah felt seen in a completely new way, not as a victim, not as a controversy, but as someone who had fought and won. That night, Michael organized a celebratory dinner. Not something big, just him, Sarah, Ethan, and Mrs. Johnson, Sarah's mother. To Sarah, Michael toasted with juice, since Ethan was present. "The bravest woman I know, who faced fear, judgment, and brutal exposure, and still didn't give up. You are incredible." And to Mom, Ethan added, raising his juice glass, "The best mom in the world, who doesn't let anyone be mean to her." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Thank you, my love." Mrs. Johnson just smiled, holding her daughter's hand. She didn't say anything, but Sarah saw the pride in her eyes. After dinner, when Mrs. Johnson took Ethan to her house for a sleepover with Grandma, Sarah and Michael were alone for the first time in weeks. "So," Michael said, sitting with her on the couch, "you survived." "We survived," she corrected. "Yeah, us." He was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, there's something I want to ask you." "Okay. Not now, but soon." He looked into her eyes. "I just want you to know that this, what we have, is not temporary for me. It's not just surviving storms together, it's more." Sarah felt her heart race. "Michael, you don't have to say anything now, just know that." He kissed her softly. "One day at a time still applies, but my 1 days all include you." And for the first time, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this. Deserved love that stayed even when things got tough. Deserved partnership that didn't crumble under pressure. Deserved happiness that wasn't selfish. Deserved all of this and more. March arrived with that humid heat signaling the end of summer in New York. Sarah woke up on a Friday and realized, with a jolt, that it had been exactly a year since that fateful night she sent the message by mistake. A year since her life had turned upside down, or maybe right side up, depending on the perspective. She stretched her arm and felt the empty side of the bed. Michael had left early. He still kept his own apartment, still respected her and Ethan's space, but his things were scattered around the room. A book on the nightstand, an extra toothbrush in the bathroom, a change of clothes in the closet. Small invasions that Sarah surprisingly didn't mind. Her phone vibrated. A message from him. "Good morning. I remembered today marks a year. I have a surprise for you. I left Ethan with your mom tonight. No questions, no planning, just trust me." Sarah smiled, typing back, "You know I hate surprises." "I know, but you love me anyway." It was the first time he used the word love in a message. They had said it in person, of course, whispered declarations in intimate moments, murmured words before sleep. But seeing it written there, casual and confident, made something warm in Sarah's chest. "I do love you," she replied. "Unfortunately." "Hey, no unfortunately. You love me fortunately. Let's agree to disagree." In the office, the atmosphere was celebratory for a different reason. Creative and Commerce had just signed the biggest contract in the agency's history, a national fast food chain that wanted to completely revamp its image. It was the kind of account that turned medium agencies into major market players, and Sarah would be the lead coordinator for all the launch events. "Congratulations, Johnson." Jason found her in the hallway holding 2 coffees. "I heard you're going to run the whole operation, 20 simultaneous events in 10 cities. Are you a masochist or what?" Sarah accepted the coffee, laughing. "Probably, but it's going to be amazing. Or a logistical nightmare. I bet $50 you'll have a nervous breakdown in the 3rd week. You're on. And when I prove I'm perfectly in control, you owe me dinner at that expensive Japanese restaurant you keep talking about. Deal." In truth, Sarah was terrified. It was the biggest project of her career. 20 simultaneous events meant coordinating teams in 10 different cities, dealing with local vendors, managing budgets that made her head spin. But it also meant she had proven her worth, that she wasn't just the CEO's girlfriend, but a respected professional in her own right. At 3 in the afternoon, she received an email from Jake. "Sarah, urgent meeting in your office. It's about the social media project for New Glamour." Sarah frowned. What project? She wasn't working on anything for New Glamour. When she entered her office, she found a surreal scene. The lights were off, scented candles illuminated the space, and in the center of the table was a complete meal. Her favorite dish from the Italian restaurant in Little Italy that she loved, but never had the money to order. Michael was sitting in her chair, smiling like a mischievous teenager. "What? How could you?" Sarah was speechless. "Jake is my accomplice. And before you complain that this is inappropriate in the workplace, technically it's 3:30 on a Friday. Everyone is already in weekend mode, and I'm the CEO, so I make the rules." Sarah couldn't stop smiling. "You're impossible, and you love me for it." He stood up, pulling the chair for her to sit. "Sit down. Let me serve you." They ate there, in Sarah's glass office, with the office partially empty around them. They talked about everything and nothing, her new project, a crazy idea he had to expand the agency, the latest dinosaur discoveries from Ethan. "He asked me something yesterday," Michael said, twirling spaghetti on his fork. "When I picked him up from school." "What? If I was going to be his stepdad?" Sarah froze. "And what did you say?" "I said that was something he and you needed to discuss together. But if it were up to me, I would love to have that privilege." Michael looked at her intensely. "Sarah, I know we're taking it slow. I respect that. But I also want you to know that for me, you and Ethan, you are everything." "Michael, no, let me finish." He put down the fork, taking her hands. "This year has been the craziest, hardest, most terrifying of my life. And it has also been the best, because for the first time, since I can remember, I'm not just existing. I'm living, feeling, loving." Tears were already streaming down Sarah's face. "So I want to ask you something. Not here, not now, but tonight. And before I do, I want you to know that there's no pressure. If you say no, we continue exactly as we are. No hard feelings, no drama." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "But I also want you to know that my answer has been decided for months. I was just waiting for the right moment." Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded. At 7 in the evening, Michael picked up Sarah from the office. She had changed into a simple but elegant navy blue dress she kept in her closet for emergencies. He wore a suit without a tie, the collar of his shirt open, and that nervous smile she had come to love. "Where are we going?" she asked as they got into his car. "Surprise, remember, trust." They drove through the city, and Sarah recognized the way. Brooklyn. Specifically towards Market Square, where they had their first real date a year ago. The square was empty because it was Friday night. The antique fair only happened on Saturdays, but there were Christmas lights still hanging from the trees. Someone had forgotten to take them down after the holidays, creating a magical atmosphere. Michael parked and guided her to the center of the square, near the gazebo where he had waited for her that first Saturday. "Do you remember this place?" he asked. "Like it was yesterday. I was terrified. You were nervous. Neither of us knew what we were getting into. And now I can't imagine my life without you in it." Michael smiled, but there was nervousness there too. He put his hand in his pocket, and Sarah felt her heart race. "Sarah Louise Johnson," he began, and his voice was trembling. "I spent 42 years thinking I knew how life should be. I had plans, structures, carefully built walls. And then you sent that message by mistake and shattered everything." She laughed through the tears that were already falling. "And in the last 12 months you taught me things I never imagined I needed to learn. You taught me that vulnerability is not weakness, that love is not about control, it's about choice, that family is not just about blood, it's about who you choose to show up every single day." He knelt down, and Sarah brought her hand to her mouth, sobbing. "You taught me that burnt pancakes are still delicious when you eat them with the right people. That dinosaur facts at 7 in the morning are the best way to start the day. That making grocery lists together can be romantic. That it's possible to rebuild after everything has been destroyed." From the velvet box he pulled from his pocket, a simple yet elegant ring sparkled under the Christmas lights, a deep blue stone, surrounded by small diamonds. "So I'm asking you, with no perfect plans, no guarantees, no control over the future, will you marry me? Let me be a partner in your crazy and beautiful life. Let me be Ethan's stepdad. Let's build something together, one day at a time." Sarah was crying so much she could barely see. "Yes, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Michael slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and then he stood up and kissed her. It was a kiss wet with tears, accompanied by laughter and sobs, completely imperfect and absolutely perfect at the same time. When they pulled away, Sarah looked at the ring. The blue stone matched exactly with the dress she was wearing. "Sapphire," Michael explained, "your birthstone. And before you ask, yes, I did my research. Yes, I planned this. Yes, I know you would have teased me if I gave you a traditional diamond. You know me so well." "I do. And I still want to know more. I want to know you on all days, happy, sad, frustrated with traffic, stressed about work, laughing at Ethan's bad jokes. Every day, Sarah." They stood there, embraced, in the middle of the empty square, under out-of-season Christmas lights, and Sarah thought about how a year ago she was making pasta alone, feeling invisible, believing that happiness was something for other people. "There's one more thing," Michael said, pulling out his phone. "I know you want to tell Ethan in person, but I couldn't resist." He pressed play on a video. It was Ethan, clearly filmed earlier. Ethan ran into a place that looked like Mrs. Johnson's apartment. "Hi, Mom." He waved at the camera, all excited. "If you're watching this, it means you said yes. So, yay!" He started jumping. "Is Michael going to live with us now? And can he teach me more about dinosaurs? And can we be like a real family, with a dad and a mom and everything?" I know Dad is still my dad, but having two dads is like super cool, like the superheroes who have extra powers. Anyway, I love you, Mom, and I love Michael too. Bye. Sarah was laughing and crying at the same time. "Did you show him? Did you tell my son before asking me?" "Technically, I asked him for permission first. I thought it was appropriate. Michael showed another video, this one from a few days ago. In it, Michael and Ethan were sitting in the park, probably after school. "Ethan, can I ask you a serious question?" Michael asked in the video. "Sure. How would you feel if I asked your mom to marry me?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, thinking. "You promise you won't leave? Like a real promise?" "I promise for real. By the way, I'm thinking of selling my apartment and moving closer to you guys. Or you guys moving to a bigger place. It depends on what your mom wants. And will you keep teaching me about dinosaurs?" "Always. We can even take a trip to the American Museum of Natural History in New York one day. They have giant skeletons." Ethan's eyes widened. "Seriously? Okay then, you can ask her to marry you, but only if you're nice to her always, because she's the best mom in the world and deserves someone who is super nice." "I agree 100%. So do I have your permission?" "You do." And then Ethan hugged Michael tightly. Sarah was now sobbing. "You two conspired against me." "Totally. And Ethan has more plans. Apparently he wants to be a ring bearer at the wedding and wear a dinosaur tie." "Of course he does." They walked back to the car hand in hand, Sarah stopping every 2 steps to look at the ring, still not completely believing that this was real. "Where to now?" she asked. "Your mum made a celebratory dinner. Ethan's there, buzzing with excitement to see you. But we can make a stop first if you want." "Where?" "That bakery we went to on our first date. The one that makes the best toasted bread in New York." Sarah smiled. "It's closed at this hour." "Not if you call the day before and ask them to open just for you, because you're going to propose to your girlfriend and want to make everything perfect." "You didn't do that." "I did. It cost a fortune, but it was worth every penny. The bakery hour bread was lit just for them, with Mr. Johnson, the owner, waiting with 2 steaming toasted breads and fresh coffee." "Congratulations, dear," he said, hugging Sarah. "This young man came personally to ask for my help. He said he wanted every detail to be perfect. Because you deserve it." They sat at the same table from that first date, eating toasted bread and drinking coffee, and Sarah thought about how much had changed in a year. "Do you regret it?" Michael suddenly asked. "Sending that message?" Sarah thought about the question, really thought, about the chaos that followed, the public exposure, the lawsuit, the sleepless nights, the terror of almost losing Ethan. She thought about all the ways her carefully controlled life had been shattered. "No," she finally said, "it was the only mistake in my life that turned out completely right." Mrs. Johnson's house was festive when they arrived. Ethan ran to hug Sarah as soon as she opened the door. "Mom, did you say yes? Show the ring." "Oh, Grandma," she said yes. Mrs. Johnson hugged her daughter with tears in her eyes. "My dear, I am so happy for you, so happy that you finally allowed yourself this. Thank you, Mom, for everything." The table was abundant: lasagna, salad, garlic bread, and in the center a cake that said, "Congratulations, Sarah and Michael," with crooked letters clearly made by Ethan. "I wrote it," he announced proudly. "It's a bit crooked, but Grandma said it's the thought that counts." During dinner, Ethan wouldn't stop asking questions. "When is the wedding? Can I bring my favorite dinosaur? Are we going to live in a house with a backyard? Can I have a dog? Does Michael make pancakes better than you, Mom?" "Hey!" Sarah pretended to be offended. "My pancakes are great." "They're burnt," Ethan and Michael said at the same time, and then laughed. Sarah looked around the table, her son laughing, her mom smiling, the man who had become her partner in everything, and she thought about how, a year ago, she was so lost, so alone, so convinced that happiness wasn't for her. After dinner, when Ethan finally went to bed, after making Michael promise 1,000 more times that he wouldn't leave, Sarah and Michael were alone on the porch of Mrs. Johnson's house, looking at the city lights. "Scared?" she asked. Terrified, he admitted. And you? Terrified, but also hopeful. For the first time in years, I'm hopeful about the future. We have a lot to decide. Where we're going to live, how to integrate our lives, the wedding. One day at a time, Sarah interrupted him. Remember? Michael smiled. One day at a time. But since we're planning, I want something small. Just family and close friends. Nothing extravagant. You, an event coordinator, want a simple wedding? I coordinate events for others. Mine, I want it to be about us, not about impressing anyone. She leaned against him. And I want Ethan to be involved, for real, not just as a ring bearer. I want him to feel like he's part of this. Like making the vows as a trio? Why not? We're building a family of 3 anyway. He kissed the top of her head. You're amazing, you know. I know. It took you a while to realize. They laughed and stayed there, embraced, planning a future neither of them would have imagined possible a year ago. 3 months later, on a sunny June afternoon in Mrs. Johnson's backyard, a small rustic venue in Brooklyn, adorned with string lights and plants everywhere, Sarah Johnson married Michael Thompson. She wore a simple ivory dress, her hair down with natural flowers, and that smile that lit up the whole place. Michael, in a navy suit without a tie, had eyes only for her. Ethan stood beside them, in a grey suit with a dinosaur tie he had insisted, holding the rings with the seriousness of someone on an important mission. There were no more than 40 people, family, close friends, and a few colleagues from the office. Jason was the best man, Lisa was the maid of honor, and Mrs. Johnson hadn't stopped crying since the beginning of the ceremony. The officiant began, "We are here to celebrate not only the union of Sarah and Michael, but the formation of a family. With that, I would like to invite Ethan to participate in the vows." Ethan stepped forward, clearly nervous but determined. Sarah knelt down to his height. "Ethan, you know I love you more than anything in the world, right?" "I know, Mom. And none of this will change. You will always be my #1 priority. But now we're going to have Michael in our family too. Is that good for you?" "That's great," Ethan beamed, "because now we have someone who knows how to make real pancakes." The audience laughed, including Sarah. Michael also knelt down. "Ethan, I promise I will take care of you and your mom. I will be here every day to help with homework, to talk about dinosaurs, to pick you up from school when your mom can't. And I promise I will make pancakes that are much, much better than hers." "Michael!" Sarah pretended to be indignant, but was laughing. "And I promise that no matter what happens, I won't leave. Family is forever." Ethan hugged Michael tightly, and there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. After the vows between Sarah and Michael, promises of partnership, respect, love in good times and bad, to build a life together one day at a time, they exchanged rings. "I declare you husband, wife, and family," the officiant announced, and everyone applauded. The kiss was interrupted by Ethan squeezing in between them, hugging them both, and the photo that Lisa took of that moment, the 3 of them embracing, laughing, completely imperfect and absolutely happy, became Sarah's favorite photo. The party was exactly what she wanted, simple, full of love, with good food and even better music. Ethan danced with everyone, showing off his awkward moves. Mrs. Johnson finally stopped crying long enough to toast to the courage to start anew. Jason made an embarrassing speech about how he always knew they would be together. A blatant lie, but funny. When the DJ played the Corner Club, Michael pulled Sarah to dance. "Remember the first time we danced to this song?" he asked. "In your apartment, when I was heartbroken and you made me dance anyway. And now I'm dancing because I want to, because I choose to, because I'm happy." She looked into his eyes. "Thank you for teaching me that happiness isn't selfish. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't need walls." They danced. And for the first time in her adult life, Sarah wasn't thinking about lists, plans, or controlling every detail. She was just there, present, living the moment. Ethan interrupted the dance, pulling their hands. "Everyone, come take a family photo!" And so, surrounded by all those they loved, Sarah, Michael, and Ethan posed for pictures. A non-traditional family, built not by blood, but by choice, not perfect, but real. 6 months later, Sarah entered the new apartment carrying boxes. It was much larger than the old one. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a spacious living room, and even a small office where she could work from home. The windows overlooked Central Park, and they could already see Ethan down below, shouting with joy on the playground. "Last box," Michael announced, coming in with a huge box labeled Ethan's Dinosaurs. "How does an 8-year-old have so many dinosaurs?" Sarah laughed. 9, Michael corrected. "He had a birthday last week, remember? And it's my fault. I can't visit a museum without buying him a new dinosaur." "You're worse than I am." They placed the boxes in Ethan's room, already partially decorated with dinosaur posters and a shelf full of books about paleontology. Sarah looked around the new apartment, at the boxes waiting to be unpacked, at the new life they were building. "Are you scared?" Michael asked, hugging her from behind. It was the same question she had asked on the day of the proposal. And the answer was the same. Terrified, but also hopeful. "We have a lot of work ahead. Unpacking, organizing, making this place a home." "One day at a time," Sarah said, turning to kiss him. Outside, they heard Ethan shout, "Mom, Dad, come see! There's a giant dog here!" Michael and Sarah looked at each other. "Did he just call me Dad?" Michael asked, his voice choked. "I think so." Sarah also had tears in her eyes. They rushed to the window, waving to Ethan down below. The boy waved back, a huge smile on his face. And Sarah thought about how, a year and a half ago, she was making pasta alone, feeling invisible. Now she had a family. Not the perfect family of fairy tales, but real, noisy, messy, full of boxes to unpack and toy dinosaurs scattered everywhere. And it was more than she ever dared to dream. "You know what's funny?" Sarah looked at Ethan. "If you had asked me 2 years ago what I wanted from life, I would have said stability, security, control. I would have never said this beautiful, imperfect chaos. And now I know that sometimes the best things in life come from the unplanned, from mistakes, from messages sent by mistake." She turned to Michael, holding his face. "Thank you for showing up at my door that night, for not giving up when I tried to push you away, for choosing us every day. I will always choose you, every day, forever." Ethan burst through the door out of breath. "Can I have a dog? The landlord said I can. Please, please, please." Sarah and Michael exchanged a glance, that silent communication that couples develop. "Maybe," Sarah said. "Let's talk about it." "Yes!" Ethan shouted, interpreting maybe correctly as probably yes after a lot of negotiation. "I haven't said yes yet," Sarah tried to protest, but she was already laughing. "But you will." "I know." Ethan hugged them both. "You guys are the best parents in the world." And in that moment, surrounded by the chaos of boxes, unfinished plans, and the uncertainty of everything still to come, Sarah realized something fundamental. She had spent years trying to control every detail of her life because she believed that losing control meant losing everything. But the truth was exactly the opposite. It was when she finally let go of control, when she allowed life to surprise her, when she risked her heart despite the fear. That was when she gained everything. It wasn't perfect. It would never be. There would be arguments about who forgot to buy milk, stressful nights with work deadlines, moments of doubt and fear. Ethan would have tough days, Michael would continue to be a mediocre father, and life would remain complicated. But there would also be lazy Sunday. Mornings with pancakes, made by Michael. Movie nights with popcorn spilled on the couch. Adventures at dinosaur museums. Late-night conversations about everything and nothing. There would be love. Real, imperfect, chosen every day. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything. Epilogue. 2 years later, Sarah was in the kitchen of the apartment, frying bacon for Sunday breakfast when she felt arms wrap around her waist. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson," Michael murmured against her neck. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson." She still smiled every time she heard the name. She had kept Alves professionally, but at home, in private moments, she loved being reminded that she was part of something bigger. "Is Ethan still sleeping?" Miracle of miracles, yes, and Max too. Max, the golden retriever that Ethan had begged for months, was sprawled out on the living room rug, softly snoring. "So we have like 15 minutes of peace before the chaos starts," Michael suggested, with that mischievous smile. Maybe 10. The smell of bacon usually wakes him up." As if summoned, they heard footsteps in the hallway, but it wasn't Ethan. A little girl with messy dark hair, no more than 2 years old, entered the kitchen dragging a blanket. "Daddy? Hungry?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Sarah's heart still squeezed every time she saw Lily, the daughter she never planned to have, who arrived as a complete surprise a year after the wedding. The doctor had said that Sarah had difficulty getting pregnant, so they weren't even trying. And then, it happened. Michael picked up their daughter, kissing the top of her head. "Good morning, Dinosaur Princess." "Not Dino, Max." Lily was obsessed with the dog. Of course, Dog Princess then. Ethan appeared next, already dressed in his soccer uniform. "Mum, remember my game is at 10? "I remember, sweetheart. We'll leave in 45 minutes. The kitchen became chaotic. Sarah serving bacon and eggs, Michael trying to get Lily to eat while she insisted on giving everything to Max, Ethan chattering about soccer strategies he had seen on YouTube. It was loud, it was messy. Sometimes, especially on days when Lily had an epic tantrum or Ethan argued with Michael about homework, it was completely exhausting. And it was perfect. After dropping Ethan off at the soccer field, where he played horribly but had a blast, Sarah, Michael, and Lily went to the grocery store. A mundane, ordinary outing, but as they walked through the aisles, Michael pushing the cart with Lily sitting inside, Sarah checking her list, some things never changed. She had a moment of absolute clarity. 3 years ago, she was making this same trip alone, feeling invisible, questioning if this was all life had to offer. Now she was here, debating with her husband whether to buy sugary cereal or the healthy kind. Lily decided for them by grabbing the colourful box. Planning the Sunday barbecue with family, living this extraordinary, ordinary life. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked, noticing her distant look. "About how lucky I am, about how everything could have been different if I hadn't sent that message, or if I hadn't shown up at your door, or if I had let fear win. But you didn't." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You chose courage, you chose love, you chose us." Sarah looked at Lily sleeping in the cart, at Michael beside her, thought of Ethan on the soccer field living his best life, and knew with absolute certainty that she would do it all again. Every difficult moment, every fear overcome, every time she chose to trust instead of control. Because yes, the message had been sent by mistake, but everything that came after, that had been choice, and she would choose this, choose them, choose love, choose this imperfect and beautiful life, every day, forever.